The recording has begun.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our regular Town Council meeting on May 12th, 2026. I'd like to officially call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Madam Town Clerk, would you please do a roll call?
Councilman Gutenberg,
Here.
Councilman McCormick,
Here.
Councilman Sampson,
Here.
Councilman Johnson,
Here.
Mayor James.
Here.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. If you all could please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, if you have had a moment to look at tonight's agenda, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move to amend the agenda as presented by adding ordinance 26-03, resign to run, to manage discussion and legislation using the clean version that was provided to council via email on May 4th, 2026.
I'm going to ask, thank you for that motion. I have a motion on the table. Mr. Stevens, I know that our rules of procedure have, and I'd have to reference that again, that we did not, it had to be under certain circumstances, like timely and all of that, that it had to be added, that was allowed to be added. Could you refer, I think it's under 4-2. And we had this discussion last time. It says, say something about it has to be timely or an emergency kind of thing to add something.
Well,
Am I wrong in that?
Madam Mayor, good evening. I think what you're referencing is in section 4.2 of the Rules of Procedure. And I believe that not only past practice, but I believe the current language in the newly adopted Rules of Procedure as of April 28th. The language I'm reading here says last minute submissions are discouraged, but may be added to a meeting agenda where applicable, subject to a vote of the town council at the meeting. So I believe that it's within the council's power and discretion. There was a motion that I believe procedurally from here on, I think council would have to take a vote on that motion would be the way to address it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and especially since it's not attached to the agenda and the council, our town council, our attorney's not here. But, all right, I have a motion. Do I have a second to amend the agenda to add that ordinance?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
Sure. What is the, if I could ask, so what is the nature of the discussion that we want to have tonight on the agenda?
So the nature of the discussion is to get clarity as to why an agenda item was taken off when the majority of council voted to put it on there and who authorized it to go against the will of the council. And can we then discuss it? The clean version, specifically, what was the difference between what we were told on May 4th that it was legally sufficient, and now we're hearing as a question. So just to recap, to make it clear, one, why was the will of the council not followed? Who authorized it? And two, can we discuss specifically what is the legally sufficient question that is at hand?
Okay, and the only thing I would say about that, if you're asking what is the legal question at hand, we do not have our town attorney here and he is not online. He is out of the country. So that would, he would be unable to answer that.
I guess the question is, what prompted the attorney to change his mind from legally sufficient to sufficient? Now, I understand you're saying the attorney's not here. If we're saying the attorney was wrong, then I would want to know that. But I think we're putting the cart before the horse. The first question I have is, why was the will of the council not followed?
So the question here right now, and that could be under, I don't know where that could be, but the question that you're asking is you want the ordinance put in under legislation.
What I'm asking for matters of discussion, is we discuss why the will of the council was not followed, and for legislation to go ahead tonight and vote on what was deemed legally sufficient on May 4th. And if we cannot vote on what was deemed legally sufficient on May 4th, then it be explained to us why it is not legally sufficient, since it was pulled off the agenda without the will of the council.
Okay.
Yes.
And my other thing is, as we had said before, when Councilman Gutenberg wanted HP House Bill 1142 put on, the one thing that wasn't, we do this for the public. This is what, and the public does not have the opportunity to review this. And so adding this to an agenda for possible adoption usurps that that transparency for them, because they don't have an opportunity since Friday to
So I would
review
just
it.
say, I would just say one last thing.
Sure.
The last thing I would say is that the public had a chance to see this
Mhm.
prior to this meeting. We have only seen it prior to this meeting, when we gave instruction as a body to the town manager, and the town council said on May 4th, it was good to go.
It's
But there's a new,
it's on the agenda for May 26th.
So
but that leads to the second question, which is the matter of discussion, which is, why was the will of the council not followed?
The-
The will of the council was,
Okay, this,
So if I
the only
may-
thing we're debating right now is, we've got a.
we're still in discussion.
Wait a minute, yes, we are. We have a motion, and it's only for the agenda item, is to add the ordinance use.
no, the agenda item is to discuss, I said, two questions. Why was the will of the council not followed? And two, to add to legislation to vote tonight on the,
So you're adding discussion and legislation
Yes.
without it being,
well, the discussion
Attached.
should not be an issue. That's just a simple question. Why was the will of the council not followed?
When we get to that section.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that as being
Yeah.
controversial.
So-
I do see some validity to what you're saying, but I don't know why something was pulled off the agenda without notifying the council.
So if I can
go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
say
Councilman
something. So to clean this up, we had the meeting back in April when we discussed in here what changes to make to the ordinance. And that went back to staff and the town attorney. On May 4th, our town manager, Chuck Stevens, sent an email to council saying the ordinance is legally sufficient and it'll be on your agenda tonight, 5/12. After you had your administrative review with Mr. Stevens on Thursday, you had concerns about whether this should be an ordinance or updated once the charter updates occur. Mr. Stevens had a conversation with the town attorney, said, let's put this on pause. The problem is the council gave direction on what the intent of the ordinance was going to be. Staff came back and said it was ready to go. If one, you had an issue with how it should proceed, or two, the town attorney believed he had a different legal opinion, we were under the impression that the agenda item was coming forward tonight, and that was the time to discuss it, not in the de facto meeting when the rest of the council was not there.
And point, to your point, if you read that email, the last sentence on the email says, please put any concerns or questions to me that I will forward to the attorney.
We
So
already
it
have-
was in, what,
I'm still in my time. We already had the discussion. We had the meeting. Staff
the email
go
said-
back to, Madam Mayor, it's my time.
but you're.
No.
just Because you speak, it doesn't mean.
Oh, it does. It's 100% true. And we'll get further into it in matter of discussions. Staff came back with the final draft that this council sat down here and gave explicit direction to. Not one member of council. We gave a consensus on the direction we wanted to move forward with that ordinance. Staff went back and did the work. Staff provided that work on May 4th with all of the intent that we established that meeting, and it was going to be on tonight's agenda for action. That was the email. You in your administrative meeting with Mr. Stevens and town staff had a question of, should this be an ordinance or should it be done in charter updates? We shouldn't have to go back and give our more information to something that we already made a decision on. You individually alone had a concern, which is okay, but the place to address that concern is here on the dais with the rest of the council.
I see where you say that, but if you read the email, which this is an inappropriate because we are trying to, we're in the middle of a motion. But if you read the email, it says that if you have any questions or concerns, please send this to me so I could forward it to the attorney.
But what more questions or concerns do we need when we addressed it in a public meeting and we gave direction to staff? And it came back legally sufficient, ready for action on today, May the 12th, 2026, at this exact meeting.
So are you saying, Councilman Johnson, that once an email has gone out, if you have any other questions, if it's the will of the council, you have missed your opportunity?
No, it was still up on discussion tonight. You had the ability to do it, but we as individual members don't get the back door and go maneuver legislation.
That is
or work.
absolutely not what I did. What I did, for the record, was bring up a question per the email, if you have any questions or concerns, and the attorney could not answer it, and
So
he
you,
is out of town.
so you took me around the route. So you're talking about the May 4th email. You're not talking about the Friday email.
I am talking about the email that town manager sent out. If you have any questions or concerns, please send it to me. I will forward it to our attorney.
I
That
guess-
was done because I had a question. It's not legislation yet. And that prompted the attorney to say, let me look into it. I can't be there on the meeting on the 12th because I'm out of the country, but we will get to it and I will provide my opinion.
Okay, so your questions is fine, but the email, you still negate the fact of what's occurring. And I don't know if you're talking about May 4th email or the Friday email, there was a couple. If you're talking about May 4th, the email was, this is legally sufficient and it will be on your agenda on May 12th.
Keep reading what it says.
I think you're unfortunately missing the point of this
No,
conversation.
I think that you are tailoring it to make your point stronger. The word said, if you have any concerns or questions, please forward it to me so I can forward it to the attorney. And
Miss-
by those words, I did.
I think we're kind of getting off track. The fundamental question that I am trying to hone in on is this. Is it appropriate when the council gives guidance and direction, if a question comes up, that an agenda item can be taken off without coming back to the same body to ask them for guidance? That's the fundamental question. My position is that no, because otherwise I could do the same thing, say, take something off next week because I have a question and nobody else would know.
I
anything.
cannot,
No,
I
but I understand
could-
what you're saying.
I could take something off the agenda or I could put something on the agenda. I can't take it off. The town manager can put something on the agenda and he can take it off the agenda. And
Against the will of the council.
read the email.
Okay,
The email is.
Can I take a-
No,
can I ask a question?
Email is ask your question. The question I'm asking is,
the-
once you ask your question, which is fair, I have no
Yeah.
problem with you asking your question. The question then becomes, and I think this is what we're saying. Your question was fine. Okay, there's no issue. The question is, at that point, does it come back before the council or does the agenda just change? That is the fundamental question. If the answer is it just changes, then anybody who has a question responding back to the email can have it pulled off.
It was the attorney
I
that
think-
pulled it off.
I have one simple question. I think this will clear it up to Mr. Stevens. On May 4th, you sent council an email with the ordinance saying it is legally sufficient and it will be on the agenda on May 12th, this evening. Is that correct?
I think it's substantially correct. I'd have to go back and read it, Counselor. I tend to not speak in definitive terms, though, however. I think it's more likely than not that I said it's my intent to put this on the agenda for this evening.
I would do us one favor and pull up the email.
I have it right here.
So we're saying the attorney requested of the town manager to change the agenda. That's what we're saying?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Please do.
Thank you. So that's correct, Counselor Sampson. So there was a question that was raised by a member of this council. I communicated that question to the town attorney because it was a legal question. I met with the town attorney the following day and had a regular check-in with him. And we had a conversation about the question, and the town attorney didn't feel comfortable because of his absence here this evening. And he asked me to pause the agenda item. And to clarify just a little bit as to your comments about the will of the council. When council discussed this in April, there was never a date certain established. So staff had been working on that. The other governance documents had already come before council. This one did not, because this one is moving on a different track just because of the complexities associated with it. So when it was complete and passed the initial legal review, I communicated it back to council because you hadn't seen it. So I sent it out to you with the intent of bringing it forward for your consideration here this evening. But for the fact that the town attorney couldn't be here tonight and asked me to not bring it forward in his absence, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
So I just want to be clear. If that is the precedent, then what you're saying is, and let me make sure I'm clear, any council member who has a question
Mhm.
after the council has given guidance can then prompt the town attorney to delay or request a delay afterwards. Doesn't matter what it is, correct? That's what we're saying. All we have to do is ask the question, because that's, for me, that's the issue.
I think it's a true statement, Counselor. If the question that's posed is of a legal nature and the town attorney isn't comfortable in providing a response that would stand in his absence, then yes, I think any counselor or any council member asking a question would receive the same exact treatment. Yes.
So we can
that's
pull
correct.
anything we want off in that situation.
And to be clear, this was never on this agenda. It was never on a published agenda. It was my intent to bring it forward for this agenda, but it never made it to the agenda. It was never published on agenda. It was never pulled off of
Okay.
the agenda.
I just want to make sure I just want to make sure. So now that is the standard.
Now on the.
We can ask a
deeper-
question and have something pulled
Yeah.
by prompting the town attorney.
Yeah.
That is the standard now.
Yeah, and I think the
Long
problem
as
is,
As long as it's not.
I think
on the
that you're
agenda.
twisting words.
no,
If the attorney is unable to provide his legal opinion because of circumstances such as he's out of the country, and he recommended to our town manager to put a pause on this, then yes.
I guess my
that's-
question is,
So-
why
I
doesn't,
never asked.
my question is, why doesn't the town manager come back and say, hey,
this
there
was
was a
the
question that
opinion.
was posed. I had briefed you on this. It was supposed, we had
In a
tried to
public meeting.
adhere and asked us,
He,
I would like to delay this because he's out of the town.
he did. He sent that follow-up email
So,
that says,
I think this is a deeper problem, and as we continue to establish our rules and procedure and set our expectation, on May 4th, the town manager sent us an email saying staff is prepared to bring the resign to run ordinance language back in front of you during your May 12th meeting. It gives you attached documents and all that. The updated language has been reviewed by the town attorney for legal sufficiency. Todd has stated that this document can move forward as written. Unfortunately, he will not be here tonight. We knew that on May the 4th when the clean version was sent to us.
okay, and what did the email say that he sent that for us to review with the resign to run?
Sure.
It
Yeah,
says-
that's not the point.
Okay,
This council was under the intent that on May the 12th, this ordinance will be before us as written, legally sufficient, cleared by the town
it
attorney.
is my intent to bring it to council May
It's
12th.
not-
It's my intent.
say
is
it's
what
my-
the town manager said. It is my intent. That was his intention until he was derailed or paused.
Derailed. Yes, derailed is the correct word.
By a question that, just for the record, I am in favor of resign to run. I've stated that to begin with. I have no problem with it, but somebody that is of procedure, this is a question that I had that he couldn't answer.
And that's
right then and
fine.
there.
Your question is very relevant, but it could have been had tonight when they gave the staff report.
But-
Hey, we recommend this, and council didn't have to take action had you swayed us not to take action. That's the
Okay.
problem, though.
Again, you see it one way, I see it another way. I had nothing to do with asking the attorney to pause this. Nothing.
Okay.
I asked a question to our town manager
Well-
from, per the email. So the question here is that boy, this is reminiscent of a year ago, isn't it? We have a motion on the floor to amend the agenda to include a discussion about the resign to run and to add an ordinance, and it has been seconded by Councilman McCormick. I am going to say all in favor of this amendment, please indicate, I'm going to go roll call, please indicate by saying aye. If not, nay. Councilman Gutenberg,
Nay.
Councilman McCormick,
Yes.
Councilman Sampson,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, so we will, and I'm a nay. Mr. Stevens, I don't know how to proceed with this when we have no documents in front of us to discuss and we don't have a staff report. And legislation is not here.
Well, point of order, the motion that Councilman Sampson introduced does have a written record. It is in the email that all 5 of us were CC'd on, and he stated to use the clean record as the piece of legislation we'll debate tonight. So
That
I'm
is
not sure that's a valid concern.
Okay, I'm sure that it is a valid concern because the public has not been privy to this and and Mr. Stevens may not be prepared. I don't see a computer in front of him, may not be prepared to discuss this. So it is a valid point. So thank you for that. All right, moving on. We've got Mr. Stevens, do you
So
have
just
anything to
point of
add?
order, point
Excuse me,
of
I am
order.
speaking.
Yes, I understand, but I'm calling a point of order.
No, you're interrupting. Call a point of order.
I-
We're in
I
mid-sentence to talking to the town manager. Decorum.
He called
Mr. Stevens.
I asked for a point of order.
Call a point of order.
You're
You
broken the
didn't ask.
rules.
I was in the middle of a sentence to Mr. Stevens. Mr. Stevens, I'm looking for your direction on how to proceed, that the majority of the council has requested this.
So as I heard the motion, it was to bring the conversation forward to the matters for council discussion.
Okay?
Um, And I believe that you can do that. You may at that time then decide if you want to take further action to take legislative action this evening. So I think the motion that was just approved, we can definitely add this as item 4.7, resign to run conversation under matters of council discussion for this evening. I think it's best that we have that conversation and then decide about how to move forward from there if there wants to be any further action tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilman McCormick, I will now let you have the floor.
Yeah, so the council just approved a motion, a 3-2 vote to also have this under legislation. Why are we now derailing that process, to use your verbiage, and allowing for a conversation in 4.7 to determine yes or no on that? We just voted yes. So we're going to have the matter of discussion that Councilman Sampson brought up. And then regardless of how that conversation goes, we will still have a conversation on the ordinance and legislation.
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
As item 5.11, resign to run under legislation.
Thank you.
All right, let's see if this meeting can move forward a little bit faster now. All right, so we have approved that right now. Mr. Stevens, you are
Right.
up for a Dorchester Community Center
Yeah.
presentation.
Absolutely. Good evening, council. I'm Chuck Stevens, your town manager. This evening, we have some guests joining us, and they're going to talk to you about the Dorchester Community Center, about what might be possible. As council remembers, back in February, you had a staff presentation that really laid out the history and the challenges that we're facing the town as it related to some grants that were received by the town that hadn't been expended. At that time, I asked council to give me direction, and you did that. And this is also an item that we can talk about at length under matters of discussion this evening. But in order to inform council about the possibilities of construction and the costs associated with that construction at the Dorchester site, staff commissioned and worked with CAO Barrett, and also, I can't remember the name of the architecture firm, but I know Brent is the architect and he's here with us this evening, as is Tony from CAO Barrett. So if we can ask them to come online, introduce themselves, and go ahead and start sharing your presentation. Your presentation was in the packet, and I will turn it over. I don't know who's going to lead. Tony, is that you that's going to take the lead?
Yeah, it will be myself that will be taking the lead. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. You can take it away, sir.
Sure. We do have a slide in here for introduction, so I think probably just the easiest thing is to jump right into it. As Mr. Stevens mentioned, here to talk about the Dorchester Community Center project. So, the project team, we've been working with Mr. Stevens very closely in what we believe is a great project for the community and for the town. Myself, Anthony, Emma Lexon, it's usually only Anthony when the authorities are asking. So most of the time I go by Tony. And I have Nook Hunter, who's our civil engineer that was working closely with me. Also have Brent Hutchinson of Patuxent Architects. Brent, I didn't know if you'd like to give any other introduction of yourself.
Just say good evening.
Just good evening. Okay. So both firms we're located here in Calvert County, but we have done a good amount of work inside of the town. Some of the most recent projects has been the Rosewick apartment project that's over there, and some of the commercial that's around that as well. The site itself, I assume all of the council members are probably generally familiar with the area, but it's always just kind of a good place to, to start. Kind of giving everybody an idea of where it's located here. It is east of 301 there, off of Potomac Street. The site area, or the developable site area, is about 2.1 acres of the overall 4-acre parcel, and you'll see a little bit more of that on the next slides there. The property is zoned industrial high right now, with the majority, if not all, of the surrounding zoning being central business and residential. The site is served by public water and sewer today as well. And, a picture always being worth 1,000 words. This is the site area that we are looking at. So we've given kind of an overall aerial view of the general neighborhood here. It's just south of the water tower that sits there off of Potomac Street, or I'm sorry, Dorchester Street. And zoomed in view there to the right shows the existing Department of Public Works building there is 402, as well as some existing, I believe Mr. Stevens right, is evidence storage for the local police that are keeping there. So we kind of took that, and, with all of the effort and everything that has gone into the discussions around this and the need for this, and kind of our first part of it was to kind of look at this as consultants, as civil engineers, site developers, as an architect, to really kind of look and, I guess, hone in a little bit more on kind of what are the 3 key elements that we look at. That being project scope itself, as well as timeline, and of course the biggest part of it being what is a cost, what is an anticipated cost for the project. So we took kind of these goals from before, what had been looked at, and generally it's a 14 to 15,000 square foot facility that we're looking at, with a lot of different recreational opportunities, both indoor and outdoor. And taking advantage of existing utilities and infrastructure that is around the site today. That is actually one of the biggest benefits of this site location. And then kind of layering that in with the funding goals and what we believe a phased implementation that will kind of help give an opportunity for the town to ease into the commitment. In general, right, trying to avoid just reading bullets from the slide here, is we believe that the site itself and the layout and what the goals are is technically feasible for the development. There's been getting a grant fund for a project like this is not an easy task at all, to begin with. And then when you add on top of it being, again, available water and sewer there, that we are able to maintain existing operations with the municipal facilities that are there. And, you know, what are kind of in our effort in land development is taking a puzzle and trying to put it together, and the corners of that puzzle always being stormwater management, site circulation, and parking, as well as the building layout. Is once we can kind of check those boxes, other elements such as, you know, sediment erosion control, grading, things like that, we're able to, you know, usually work within those constraints. And that's generally what the summary is that, you know, there is a high level of success for this project from a technical feasibility, and a layout for what's needed. The biggest challenge with the property is the zoning right now that we're seeing. The site is zoned IH, and from what we can tell, and I might try to do my best to go back a couple of slides here, I apologize, but I don't have all of the history of exactly how the zoning came to be on the property, but with everything else around it being residential or kind of like a community business feel to it, is it looks like the IH zones were kind of created around what were existing uses with the Department of Public Works facilities, as well as a utility facility to the north there. But the overall general character of this community is more in that CB and residential district. And I think the biggest challenge is right now is a community center within an industrial zone like this is not an allowable use. So one of the first and, you know, most important steps, I think, to success of this project would be to go through a rezoning effort. And what we're seeing is really the use is probably more consistent with that CB district that is there, just to the west of the site that we're seeing here. From there, always the biggest part of this as well is cost. We took a look at this and came up with an overall development with what you're seeing here. And, you know, the first phase of this project being the recreational facility, you know, indoor recreational facility and associated parking for that. And then jumping to phase two, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit colorblind, so I'm not great with colors, but I think it's like pink and then blue here, which being like more of a controlled entry community lounge area that kind of supports that indoor multi-purpose assembly kind of gymnasium part of it. There is a little bit more of a parking requirement that comes with that as well. And then the final phase of this being is the last portion of the building being community support spaces, training rooms, and even the potential consideration that Mr. Hutchinson came up with, what I thought was a great idea, is, you know, it gives a possibility of creating a daycare, which is for any parents know that that's always a challenge in finding daycare, as well as a possibility of creating revenue for the town. So trying to find a way that it works all together, but also allows you to kind of take bites of that elephant at a time. I do want to mention, and again, Mr. Hutchinson brought this to my attention, I apologize. There were some typos originally in the report that you received. The overall phase amounts are what you are seeing here and what is kind of reported in the tables. The text itself did not get updated, which is on me, and I apologize for that. Initially, we had started with cost estimating at about $200 per square foot for a building of this type, but we just thought it would be better to be a little bit more conservative in that number, and closer to 300 is kind of what we're seeing in conversations with local contractors and experience. So the totals are correct. There's some verbiage there that needs to be updated in the report, and Mr. Stevens will get you an update to that and get that over to you as well for the record. Right now, the schedule and kind of funding consideration side of this is we talked about all the different phases and kind of how we're seeing to, you know, try to handle this. Right now, I understand there's about $1.25 to $1.8 million in available funding, and one of the critical deadlines there is I guess a grant that is scheduled to expire in June of next year. So in addition to going through the rezoning effort, which usually runs hand in hand with advancing a design and entitlement effort together, that's really where we would say is like, hey, for the next step, the next critical step for the project, for the town, and seeing this come to fruition would be to advance that design effort immediately. Design and land development in these cases, it's challenging, right? It's not an easy task on all sides that are involved. And I think that that's what we would highly recommend is trying to confirm as to whether or not that grant that's getting ready to expire could be allocated towards a design effort and, getting that going sooner than later so that you can expense that money within the grant deadline that is there and taking full advantage of that. And obviously, prioritizing what we believe is phase one is like the first step with that. I'll throw it out there now. There's a slide at the end for questions and we can have some discussion on it, but it also kind of leans itself to, 3.1 for phase one and another roughly $900,000 for phase two is if there was any possible way. I mean, sometimes we're down to hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to make a project work. But phase one and phase two, combining those together with an overall budget of about $4 million really would be a recommendation as well. This last slide, because again, pictures being worth 1,000 words, just kind of gives you a general look of the overall around the building and how that kind of plays into, what we're seeing and kind of bringing it together. There are other things obviously that you can do with the building and, facades and treatments and finishes and things like that will change the character and would all come out kind of through that design process and value engineering where you want to spend the money and not. I think one of the biggest things here that we were able to take advantage of is Dorchester Street is very wide as it is today. It's almost built, it's like 36 feet curb to curb, which is very wide for really what is a dead end road today. So we were able to kind of take advantage of some of that area, and what you're seeing here is that parking along the street to hopefully do two things: is to slow traffic down as well and kind of take advantage of that open set or that section of the roadway to reduce costs, reduce stormwater management requirements, and hopefully bring something to the community. It would be great to see for this area and great to work on. And that kind of wraps up the presentation there. Go ahead and stop sharing. I can always bring it back up again. And I guess just would turn it over to the council and anybody that has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation and explanation too, and very thoroughly done. I appreciate that. Councilman Gutenberg, do you have any questions?
So the phase one, as I'm looking at it, it really looks like it is just a gymnasium space. Is that right?
Correct.
That's correct, yeah. It's
Yeah, Brian,
used for a multi-purpose room and have restrooms and an entrance, and the main use, it would be multi-purpose and or, gymnasium type use.
Okay, but like really it is a gymnasium with a proper gymnasium floor, or is it some, when you say multi-purpose, is it you could put tables in there, that kind of thing? I'm trying to understand how flexible is that space?
The idea was so that it could be used for both.
Okay.
So we haven't, gotten into the meat of the design of the building, but the idea was to have it so that it could be used for basketball or something like that, or it could be used for community get together. It can be used for either type of space.
Okay. And then the reason for pairing it with the phase two piece, just a little more description of those phase two facilities that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the building kind of fronts to Plan South as we're looking at it right here towards the community. And so the phase two section would act as a main entry and control area for phase one and for preparation for phase three. And so that provides the main entrance, that restrooms. If we ended up having second floor space, then it could have vertical circulation, it could have a control area, and it could have like a lounge. We also were thinking about maybe a patio on the west side, which is planned north. So it kind of serves as a connector between the two halves of the building. And then for phase 3, depending on budget and need and everything, that could be the community support spaces for arts and crafts or other kind of activities that might be wanted. Or another thought that I had that Tony mentioned was if there was a need for a daycare, then that could be on a ground floor with a playground next to it. And if we did second floor space either when the phase 3 was built or sometime in the future, then the first floor could be daycare and the second floor could be the support area. So there's lots of different options and flexibility for how the building could develop over time depending on community's need and budget.
Okay, and then the zoning is what it was actually surprised me to see that was zoned the way it is. So the thing where I find myself with the most questions, Mr. Stevens, are really around how the financial implications of a lot of this, and so really needing to understand how to have that part of the conversation, which I think is not right. This is not right tonight, but
I think we can have part of it tonight, Counselor. I don't think that Tony or Brent need to be a part of that. That's why it's also scheduled later in your evening tonight. We can talk a little bit about that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, then that's all the questions I have.
Councilman McCormick?
Yeah, Anthony and Brent, thank you very much for the presentation, the clarity there. I have one question in this part, and then to your point, Mr. Stevens, I'll save the rest for the later discussion we're going to have tonight. I come from a military background, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, typically time bound to me. I don't know if that's appropriate for this topic or if the phases mean different things. So I see here in the written report, phase 1 is separate from phase 2 is separate from phase 3. But then the verbal recommendation we got tonight was phase 1 and phase 2 operate together, phase 3 on the back end. Do you have the time expectations for those phases, or is it meant to be read in a different way?
Very good question. I appreciate that clarity. I kind of sprung adding the phase 2 onto it. It was just as Nook Hunter and I were kind of preparing for the meeting tonight, we were talking about it and was looking at it kind of just solely from two big points to me was the cost itself, right?
Yep.
It's always you're going to get some economy of scale trying to do them together as well, right? Larger project, you're going to get a better bang for your buck.
Sure.
The way that I envisioned it, right, is that with the gymnasium multi-purpose assembly, right, it kind of reminds me of St. Paul's Church over here in Calvert County, where they have essentially what is set up as a basketball court, and then they come in there and they'll, have Boy Scout meetings or things like that in there as well, right? What they do have with that is they have an entryway and a vestibule, right, where you're allowed, that the doors stay locked and it's easy, it's easier to kind of monitor who's coming and going with that.
Sure.
And so I think that that's the other part of it as well, is where it kind of makes sense to have that control area, lounge area, entry. I look at it as an entry into the gymnasium. Eventually you would be coming in there, turning left to go into the gymnasium, and then eventually when phase 3 happens, then you'd have the ability to go right into the other buildings as well. The phasing.
I apologize because I think we may not be getting at the root of the question. So I understand the intent as to why you're recommending phase 1, phase 2 together, phase 3 on the back end. My question is, do you have an expectation, or is it out of the scope of your presentation, your team, to let us know your expectation for completion of phase 1 and phase 2 and then start of phase 3? What I mean by that is it, to do phase 1 and phase 2, do you see that as a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever amount of time? And then as you start phase 3, does that mean that the things we built in phase 1 and phase 2 are not operational? We have to wait for 3. Can you use the gymnasium as the community support spaces are being built? That's what I'm asking about from a timeline stance.
The $1 million question of how long is it going to take, right?
Yep.
Absolutely, Council. So I would tell you is, as let me just start with phase one standing alone, right? Is the process itself is it's probably an effort of design and what Mr. Hutchinson and I would be doing of roughly 7 to 8 months worth of actual design effort and putting that together and doing it. The other part of that is the process through the town.
Sure.
And so, of a project of about the size as you are looking in probably that 1 to 2 year time frame before you're able to put a shovel in the ground. The build itself, I would say it's probably about a year. So I think that I mean, and Brent, please correct me if you disagree with that, but I think that you're looking at probably of about a 2 to 3 year window between the time you said go to where you would be able to break ground or open up the facility.
Okay.
Um,
And so good. So,
so the problem is when you start that process over again, right? There's always, have to go through those hurdles again.
of course.
So if phase one happens on its own, it's that 2 to 3 year time frame that we just talked about. If you did 1 and 2 together, it's still that 2 to 3 year time frame, right?
Okay.
Because it's just not that big of a scope change.
Okay.
And honestly, I think if you did all 3 phases at the same time, your design period's probably roughly still the same, about that 2 year window, but your construction's probably going to go out another 18 months, right? Or it's going to go from a year to probably 18 months.
Okay.
And I'll defer to Mr. Hutchinson on this. I think the positive of it is when you're adding to exterior walls like this of a building is you should still be able to operate within the phases that are already there, right? Is that you would add onto the building, you keep that wall there, and the last thing that you do is you knock through that wall to create that walkway and accessibility through there. So very common to what you're seeing in kind of more like urban development, building additions or things that are going right next to each other. I don't see any reason why one phase could not continue to operate through construction. There are obviously considerations that go with that you need to prepare for, and fencing it off and just make sure that you're maintaining safety. But I don't see a reason for it to close if it was phased out.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that directly answers the question. So I appreciate that. And then I just want to explain the why behind the question. So why did I ask it that way and why am I getting at that? I know these grants are typically time bound, and Mr. Stevens made that very clear in his report to us. I think it might have been back in late January, early February when we got this information. So if those are tied to the timeline of, I don't know if it's shovel hits dirt or if it's we contracted somebody, whatever those requirements are, it's just important for us to really understand, hey, when does this start? When is the grant good for? And then are we executing within that time frame? Because again, we're looking at later on, if we ended up adding a second story, this could be anywhere from like $6 to $8.7 million. We got about $1.25 million worth of grant money here. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that if we do end up taking on this endeavor, that we're truly getting the benefit of the total 1.25, and that we're not actually adding a bigger bill than maybe what we even think today. So that clarity made a lot of sense to me, makes me more confident with the information here. So thank you for that very much, team.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Nothing.
Councilman Johnson?
Yes, good evening. Thank you. Just for my clarity, the design cost is built into the estimated cost, like that's not separate. It's just a matter of if the grant will cover that cost.
Correct. So the part of the estimates that are in back of the appendices of the report, which are a little bit more detailed, include, well, actually, I take that back. In the tables themselves that are in the report, there was a soft cost that was included of about 25%, which would include the design of that as well.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
My question to you is, this has been going on for a while, but thank you so much for all the work that you've done. And one of the things is they had a charrette over there in Phoenix Run asking for people to come over and give their input. And it was the neighborhood creative design group that had actually a rendition of what this, a conceptual idea of what this community center would look like. Did you have the opportunity to review that and tweak yours on that, or did you just go from scrap?
Actually, that was, it's a very good question, Mayor. The kickoff meeting that we had originally to start the whole project here with Mr. Stevens involved that background discussion. So once we kind of were engaged by the town to start thinking about this and prepared a proposal for our work, the next step that we had was we took about an hour meeting to walk through all that detail and all the previous presentations and kind of what the goals were. The balance and typically what we have is architects and engineers. The kind of tough task is to take what is an idealized, like, hey, this is what we would love to have, how we would love it to look, and then build in all the things that projects like this have to deal with stormwater management, parking requirements, things like that as well. So we did start with that information and kind of knew what the goal was, and then have added some practical land planning and design effort into that to see how we could get as close as possible to that, the results of that charrette, but still staying inside of the intent and the desire of that, while making sure that we were presenting something that in the long run would be technically viable through the process.
Thank you for that. And I know that I had participated in many of those gatherings, and to get public input is so important, but they did not have a ceiling on it. So, it was the
Yes,
Taj
ma'am.
Mahal they wanted to be building, reality set in, and we did not have the funding for the grandiose thing. So thank you for that. That's very important. I appreciate that. Any further questions for Mr. Stevens? Do you have anything?
If everyone's done, I'd just like to make a comment real quick. And it's really to thank Tony and Brent and your teams. I don't know if Nook's on the call, but,
She is.
council gave direction in February. I cold called Tony, never met him before, got his name referred as a reputable firm and institution. Quickly set up a meeting. He roped in Brent. We had that kickoff call. I laid out the problem set, what the town was seeking, and then gave him an unbelievably short timeline with which to do it. And you see the work product here this evening is absolutely top notch and spectacular. And I just wanted to thank you, all of your teams, for your professionalism and your willingness to partner with the town to give council this level of detail and information so that later on tonight we can have a meaningful conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chuck.
you.
Appreciate the opportunity to be involved in something like this. Community projects like this are, it's great to be involved with. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is proclamations, National Police Week. I will read this. Councilman Gutenberg, could you be prepared to read the next one since we don't have them?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson, could you read 2.4? So National Police Week, it's this week. It's May 10th through the 16th. Whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the La Plata Police Department. And whereas since the first recorded death in 1786, nearly 24,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., and whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 38th Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13th, 2026. And whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officer Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff. Now therefore, we, the council of the town of La Plata, do hereby recognize May 10th to the 16th, 2026 as National Police Week and publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in the communities across the nation. And it is signed by the council of the town of La Plata, Mayor Janine James, Councilman Paul Gutenberg, Councilman Patrick McCormick, Councilman Gregory Sampson, and Councilman Tyjon Johnson. So thank you very much to our La Plata Police Department for all you do, and this week is for you. All right, next proclamation is Bike to Work Day.
All right, thank you. Whereas in 1956, the League of American Bicyclists established May as National Bike Month, which now includes Bike to Work Day, Bike to Work Week, National Ride a Bike Day, and Walk, Bike, and Roll to School Day to help raise awareness of the rules of the road for drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists, and also highlights the need for continued expansion of safe and comfortable sidewalks, bike lanes, shared use paths, and safe crossings. And whereas biking has a positive effect on well-being, self-confidence, and resistance to stress, contributing to improved physical and mental health outcomes. And whereas switching from driving to biking to work, school, essential trips, and recreational activities reduces greenhouse gas emissions and that contribute to the climate crisis and can have serious negative health impacts. And whereas biking can improve transportation equity by providing a meaningful transportation option. And whereas healthier employees strengthen organizations through reduced healthcare costs, decreased absenteeism, increased productivity, and reduced parking costs. Now, therefore, we, the council of the town of La Plata, do hereby recognize the third Friday of May as Bike to Work Day and encourage bicycling enthusiasts and motorists to share the road so that all may reach their destinations safely. Signed, the council of the town of La Plata.
Thank you so much. And then we have one more proclamation, National Public Works Week.
Yes, good evening. May 17th through the 23rd, whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vital of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the town of La Plata. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services cannot be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the public sector, who are responsible for building, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas public work professionals stand ready to respond at a moment's notice, recover the scene of a disaster, emergencies, and life-threatening situations, and restore critical infrastructure and services. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and the children in the town of La Plata to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest in understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in the respective community. Now, therefore, we, the council of the town of La Plata, do recognize the week of May 17th through the 23rd as National Public Works Week and urge all citizens to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life as they serve, rooted in service, powered by community. Signed by the council of the town of La Plata.
Thank you very much. And that is next week. So I hope that our hardworking staff out there at Public Works gets to enjoy a week dedicated solely to them. So thank you for all of their hard work as well. That brings us to the portion of our agenda that is public comment. If there's anyone who would like to speak, I ask if they state their name, whether or not they live in the incorporated town limits, and if they could limit their comments to 3 minutes, that would be greatly appreciated. Do I have anyone who would like to speak this evening? Seeing none, we move on to our next item, which is the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So it has been motioned by Councilman Johnson and seconded by Councilman Sampson. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Town board, that brings us down to matters of council discussion, town, council board and commission assignments.
All right, good evening, council.
Good evening.
Section 7(1)(c) of the Town Council Rules of Procedure, effective April 28th, 2026, allows the Town Council to review appointments of its members to boards, committees, commissions, and authorities on an annual basis. May 12th, 2026 marks the one-year anniversary since this council took office. Your current appointments are as follows. Councilman Gutenberg currently serves on the Historic Preservation Commission as well as the Planning Commission. Councilman Sampson sits on the Design Review Board. Councilman Johnson is currently serving as the Mayor Pro Tem as well as acting as the elected liaison to the Parks and Recreation Commission. There is a vacancy on the Sustainability Advisory Committee. You'll have a second reading on that ordinance this evening, which will formally establish that committee. And then there are some other ex officio appointments that are not required at the Board of Appeals, the Board of Supervisors of Elections, the Ethics Commission, and the Finance Committee. Fiscal impact, there's no direct fiscal impact of these assignments. Any costs associated with the review and assignment of board and commission ex officio members have been absorbed within existing staff resources and budgeted operational expenditures. Your packet has the strategic plan alignment as well as sustainability and ADA considerations for you. And this evening, staff recommends that the town council review the current ex officio assignments and identify the need for assignment, reassignment, or confirmation of current appointments. And then appointment should be confirmed by a majority vote of the town council. There's no formal legislative action for this agenda item.
Thank you very much. So council, before I open up the floor for discussion, the question that I will be asking is if anyone has an interest in serving on a different board, committee, or commission, or if there's anyone considering stepping away from the current assignment. So I'll open the floor up for discussion. I'm going to start with you,
Yes.
Councilman Gutenberg. Do you have any comments?
I do. I actually have comments in both categories that you just mentioned. So what I would like to suggest is last week we talked about the Sustainability Advisory Committee.
Yes.
That is in reading of the charter of that, that is an area that I would have, probably some special interest in. However, I also am aware through discussions with my family and my employer that I don't want to overextend myself either, right? So already serving on two commissions. The Planning Commission, obviously very time consuming and very rewarding, and I love doing that work. I also very much love doing the work that I've been doing with the Historic Preservation Commission. I do feel though that we have gotten through a significant work plan in place, and so I feel that is in a good spot in that way, and I feel like what I would love to be able to do is find a way to step away from the HPC and have another member take on that and serve for what I believe will be ultimately the newly standing up Sustainability Advisory Committee.
Okay. Any other discussion? Anyone wanting to step away from boards? Councilman Sampson, you're on DRB. Are you good with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Johnson?
I'm fine with where I am.
All right. And Councilman McCormick, I know that your previous commission dissolved. Would you be able to step in HPC?
No.
Okay. So seeing that we have one is there a committee that you desire to serve on?
So the question was, can I serve on the HPC? Just from the current time stand, no. I would be happy to be the ex officio, whatever the correct term is, with the understanding that I may not be able to attend the meetings in person. If that's okay and works with that group, no problem taking on what Councilman Gutenberg talked about. If that is a problem, I physically cannot do it.
Yeah, so I do believe so that group meets only every other month, and I don't believe that it would be a problem. And I could ask Mr. Stevens as well if in fact, I think I have arranged, but made it by the skin of my teeth. I have arranged to participate remotely. But yeah, I don't see a limitation on that myself unless the town staff does.
Yep. As long as I can attend remotely, then I'm on board. And that's why I answered no to the question the way it was framed.
Stevens, is that are they able to do that is remote? Or is that a question for Shelby? Since-
No, the technology exists, so we know that it's possible. If anything, it would be a rule that's been established likely by this council. And so I think this council could decide that if virtual participation of an ex officio is desired, council can direct that.
All right, so I will bring this forward for a vote on, or a consensus as it is in our rules of procedure. So for planning, it will be Councilman Gutenberg for DRB. It will be Councilman Sampson for Parks, Councilman Johnson for Historic Preservation Commission, Councilman
No.
McCormick. And for Sustainability Advisory Committee will be Councilman Gutenberg. Did I say something wrong?
Did I hear Councilman Johnson for historic
For
preservation?
Parks?
For parks, yes.
Yes, for Parks.
I thought I heard historic preservation. Okay.
Now, HPC is Councilman McCormick. So I am bringing this forward for as
If I could, one more comment, just an administrative note. So we have a HPC meeting this Friday. And I believe I've agreed with Mr. Dooley to speak for one of the agenda items. So how do you want to handle that? Is my, yeah,
Just come.
just
I would
make it
think that-
effective or just come and do it?
Just come and do
Okay.
it.
I would think that any board or commission that someone was vacating and someone new was coming in, that there would be that overlap period,
Yes.
so that there could be, I would expect you to introduce Councilman McCormick and actually still have a voting member, since this sustainable should be up and running in.
Okay.
Hopefully.
And then
time.
he would effectively be the voting member starting at the next meeting. Right.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, so I have brought these forward. If you are in favor of that, please indicate by saying aye. If not, it would be nay.
Just a quick point of order. I apologize. Mayor Pro Temp is still Councilman Johnson as well, correct?
is
No
correct.
change to that? Okay.
We are to discuss.
Got it. Okay. Sorry. I apologize because I saw in the report.
I'm looking for a consensus. It doesn't need to be a vote. It needs to be everyone unanimous on this, I guess.
Madam Mayor, pardon the interruption. Your microphone is not picking up.
On. All right. Does it need to be closer?
All clear.
Okay, thank you. All right, if you are in favor of the consensus, I'm looking for a consensus to accept this boards, commissions, and committees as presented. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to another administrative issue, is Mayor Pro Tem. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Councilman Johnson for serving as Mayor Pro Tem for the past year. You did a great job. I would like to nominate Councilman Gutenberg to serve in this position for the next year, because he has truly taken a vested interest in learning how municipality governs, and continues to seek opportunity to expand his knowledge by attending MML conferences and seminars. And I know, Councilman Gutenberg, you have a full plate, but is this something that, and you do like this comfy chair, but is this something you would be interested in?
If nominated, yes, I would be interested in that. yeah.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to put their name forward? All right, so there is a nomination on the floor. Do I have a second for Councilman Gutenberg?
Second.
Any further discussion? If you are in favor of this appointment, please indicate by saying aye. If not, nay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion or consensus on that. So congratulations.
Thank
You've
you.
got a lot of new
Thank you.
things coming on. That's awesome. All right, next on our agenda is MOU with the State Highway Administration for the water line replacement. Mr. Stevens.
All right, council, good evening. The town of La Plata has long recognized the need to replace aging water infrastructure along Maryland Route 6 between US 301 and Willow Lane. The existing water line serving this corridor includes lead service components and aging pipe that present long-term risks to water quality, system reliability, and public health. The State Highway Administration, or SHA, is simultaneously advancing a streetscape improvement project along the same corridor under SHA contract number CH 2485-184. The project includes sidewalk widening, a shared use path, mountable medians, roundabouts, and landscaping improvements. Recognizing the operational and fiscal efficiency of coordinating the underground utility work with surface construction, the town has actively pursued a unified one dig approach, combining the water line replacement with the SHA streetscape project to avoid the cost and disruption of excavating a newly improved roadway in the future. The attached MOU between the town of La Plata and the Maryland State Highway Administration formalizes this coordination. Under the MOU, SHA will include the installation of approximately 4,490 linear feet of new 10-inch PVC C900 water line from US 301 to Willow Lane as a part of its construction contract. The town will be responsible for the design of the town betterments and will reimburse SHA for actual construction costs, currently estimated at $4,076,702. The MOU defines roles and responsibilities across the design, right-of-way, and construction phases. SHA will advertise, award, and administer the construction contract and provide construction engineering services. The town will design the waterline improvements to SHA standards, acquire any necessary property interests, and reimburse SHA within 30 days of invoicing. Upon project completion, the town will own and maintain the new water line. The fiscal impact: the estimated town reimbursement to SHA for construction of the water line replacement is $4,076,702, representing actual cost for construction, utility relocations, and SHA's construction engineering services. The town is responsible for all design costs, which are being managed under an existing or forthcoming engineering services agreement. This project is anticipated to be funded through the town's Water Utility Fund Capital Improvement Plan. The One Dig coordination strategy reflects sound fiscal stewardship by eliminating the future cost of excavating a newly constructed roadway for a standalone utility project. In your packet, you have the strategic plan alignment as well as sustainability and ADA considerations for your review. The recommended action this evening is to adopt resolution 2026-29, authorizing the town manager to execute memorandum of understanding number 3 between the town of La Plata and the Maryland State Highway Administration for the Maryland 6 Waterline Replacement Project, US 301 to Willow Lane, substantially in the form attached, and to take such further actions as may be necessary to implement the agreement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I will open it up for any questions or comments from the council.
Yeah. So, going through this, I'm reminded of when you first arrived, Mr. Stevens, and this was one of the first tasks that I remember you really latching on to, and boy, are we lucky that you did, because the timing of the Route 6 project was such that I'm not sure we would have had that window was rapidly closing when you arrived. And so thank you very much for being the manager that you are, and seeing this opportunity and getting it to the stage where it is here, and it can actually be actionably integrated into this, and will significantly save us in costs over what would have happened, and just the ripping apart. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to have to rip up those streets again after what we will likely have to experience just to get them laid down, right? The other thing that that I want to comment on related to this is that it occurs to me, we have a lot of conversations about growth in La Plata, and this is $4+ million worth of infrastructure work, and it is necessary, and it has nothing to do with any new growth that we've experienced. And if, as an example, this town had shut down growth, say after Agricopia Phase 1 went in, and we were 25% smaller than we are today, we would have had to pay this exact same bill, and it would have been distributed against a quarter fewer residents in La Plata. And so this project is 25% less expensive even than what you're showing us in that kind of a scenario, right? And so when I talk about our aging infrastructure problems, I think about these things when I see these kinds of things come across, because, well, we just passed an APFO, or we're about to pass one tonight. And that does bring a path for how new infrastructure costs are accommodated by the development that is coming in. But we should also remember that the new development that is coming in shares the cost once it's in place for the aging infrastructure problems that we have. And all of us, my house was built in 1932. I'm benefiting from that growth in this way, that those are being replaced on that street. So I'm looking forward to supporting this and us being able to take advantage of this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McCormick?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stevens, for this. I'm just a little bit of clarity, if you don't mind, the design phase portion of this. So this is where I'm a little confused. So I see right away, Section A, subsection 1, the 15 days with the town, talking about the betterments or design related materials and how we're communicating that up to SHA. Can you just walk me through where are we exactly with design phase, excuse me? I was tracking that we had a design, we got feedback on the design. Where are we now today?
I believe it's complete.
Okay,
Okay, but we don't want to paint ourselves into a corner.
Sure.
So I believe it's complete. We contract, you're correct. Council was brought a contract, I think in the fall. We contracted with McCrone Engineering and they dropped what they were doing, shifted their focus, got this done, got it over to the state.
correct.
So I believe it's 100%. Please don't quote me on that. I believe it's complete, but it's also designed. So there may be some back and forth that has to go on.
Sure.
And so we intentionally wanted to make sure that we didn't paint ourselves into a corner.
Understood. The why behind the question. Let's say we get significant feedback from town residents, business owners, whoever's exactly on Route 6 or anybody that lives in the town is impacted by this. And we decide, right, or staff recommends, hey, we should take this feedback and action it, right? Like you said, we're going to listen to all feedback, does not mean action is going to be taken. But let's say this feedback we receive, we do want to take action. Does that restart this for a 15-day clock? What does that 15 days mean?
I can't answer that.
Fair enough. Yep. And again, I know I'm getting in the weeds. For the record, I support this as well. It's just that one section. I just want to make sure you talk about painting ourselves in a corner. I just want to make sure, like, if there's a change to the plan, that we're not restarting the clock, if that makes
I
sense.
don't believe we'll be restarting the clock.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we have design and it's, as Councilor Gruenberg mentioned, this is a project that needs to occur
Totally agreed.
regardless of the Route 6 work that has to be done. So
Correct.
if the state were to walk away from the Route 6 project and say, okay, we're not going to do that,
We still have to do it.
and we would have design.
Yep.
We would already be that far ahead.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. Yeah. And I just want to echo the comments real quick. So the two projects, one dig, or whatever the phrase here, is really important, I think, for residents to walk away with. This is a project, to the point of staff and even what the council member to my right, Councilman Gruenberg, just said, which is regardless of if we were going to change the road or action these plans or take the SHA's recommendation and utilize state-funded money to come down here and help offset the costs, regardless if we say yes or no or they say yes or no, we still have to go in and fix those pipes. So it makes sense that if we're going to do this dig, right, regardless, because we have to get after the aging infrastructure and we get the benefit of, new improvements and investment to our town through the road, I think it would be silly for us to sit on it and not action it. Again, just my personal opinion there. So really glad to hear that the design phase is, it sounds like, in action, if not kind of getting near completion. Really glad. I know you walked around the town and took business owners and showed them the different areas. I really appreciate that action by you, Mr. Stevens, and I'm ready to support this. Thank you.
Yes. Just to echo what the other two councilmen said, I think is a great job, great foresight. And I am pleased with that. So I'm very happy with that. Just two questions. And I think you've already answered one, but I just want to make sure. So the cost of the 4 million is estimated. We are on the hook for those costs, no matter how much it goes over, correct? So there's no cap or anything. I didn't see anything in the contract.
There
So it
is
ends
not
up
a
being-
cap. Council, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but the town is responsible for the cost of the project, whatever that cost ends up
Okay.
being. Right
Yeah.
now, we're estimating it at just over $4 million.
Okay, so that clarifies that. And then this, it kind of piggybacks on a concern that was brought up before. And as we're looking at these improvements, which are needed, so I'm not debating it, I support this wholeheartedly. Do you have any concerns, or does the treasurer have any concerns about how this will impact our capital budget, say in 2 and 3 years? In other words, with the other things we have going on and some of those costs that we haven't figured out yet that are on the horizon, you know.
I think we feel very comfortable, Counselor, for a couple of reasons. Number one, you heard the Baker Tilly presentation at your last meeting, and this was factored in. So there's that. Also, this won't be, I don't believe that this will be a $4 million check at once, because the project, the state project is supposed to take 3 or 4 years. And so as they move down the road, we'll be then replacing the pipe. So I think the cost will be spread out over the duration of the project. So I don't think it'll be a $4 million check at once coming out of our fund balance. So I'm comfortable that the fund balance will be able to support this.
Okay, that's all I have.
Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, one technical or awareness question. As State Highway do their improvements, just thought about what's in here, the water connection, the old line will stay in place while they put the new line in. Like, there won't be no disruption to consumer services, right?
Well, there's going to be days where there's going to be water shutoffs and things of that nature. Anytime, just like when we have to do work anywhere in the town, or there's a water leak, we have to shut water off so we can replace a piece of pipe.
Okay.
In this case, it won't be an emergency repair, so we will be able to advertise and notify anybody that's going to be affected. Your water is going to be off this day for these hours while we do this main line replacement.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Thanks.
All right. So I'm looking, and I don't have any comment. I'm looking for a consensus to move this forward to legislation. If you are in favor, please indicate by saying aye. If not, say nay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, the ayes have it. Next is Maryland State Road 6 Streetscape Project.
Right, and sticking with that same project that we were just talking about, the state has asked the town if we would like to, at our own cost, put decorative pedestrian lighting options along the route. And just so you have a visual of what we're talking about, the poles that are right here in front of Town Hall, along the sidewalks up in LaGrange and right here in front of Town Hall. So this is what we're talking about in this agenda item. So the state contacted us, Sean Boyle reached out, and he said, hey, we have this opportunity to incorporate decorative pedestrian lighting into the corridor as part of the overall construction contract. And just like with other things, sometimes when construction is mobilized, if you can jump in on that, there can be some economies of scale and some cost savings, and that's what we're looking at here. So the proposed lighting design calls for 12-foot decorative pedestrian light poles with 68-watt LED luminaries, supplemented by upgraded LED roadway luminaries, replacing the existing high-pressure sodium fixtures. Cost sharing between SHA and the town is governed by, they already have regulatory documentation on this, and it's the MDOT pedestrian lighting policy for a Type B Style 2 project. Under this framework, the pedestrian light poles and luminaries themselves are 100% the town's financial responsibility, while conduit, wiring, grounding, and other electrical infrastructure components are shared on a 50-50 basis. And certain SHA-only items, including conduit trenching and boring, are funded entirely by the State Highway Administration. SHA has also noted that decorative banner accommodations are not included in any of the 3 estimates in your packet. If the town wishes to include banner arms or lights on the light pole or mounts on the light pole, that cost would also be 100% the town's responsibility. So 3 different scenarios have been developed. And of course, there's a 4th, which is the council does not want these at all and doesn't want to pay any cost. That is also an option. These are not required as part of the safety improvements along Route 6. But if council desires to have these pedestrian light fixtures, you had 3 options in your packet, and I'll cover them briefly here for you. You had option A, which runs from 301 to Willow Lane. That's the full corridor of the project. That would encompass 77 light poles, and this is the broadest scope and delivers a unified streetscape treatment across the entire corridor. The town share is estimated at $670,794. Option B, Calvert Street to Willow Lane. This option excludes approximately the first 800 feet of the western end of the project, beginning at Calvert Street rather than at US 301. It would install 55 light poles across the remaining corridor length. This approach focuses lighting investment on the more intensely developed commercial and pedestrian active segment of the corridor while reducing the cost. The town's share is estimated at $533,364. Option C, Calvert Street to Garrett Avenue. This option represents the most targeted scope, excluding approximately the first 800 feet at the west end and approximately the last 1,070 feet at the east end. It would install 43 light poles and concentrates lighting on the central corridor segment. This is the lowest cost option. The town's share is estimated at $413,143. The town's financial obligation varies by option, and I just gave those to you. These are planning level estimates only with a 15% contingency included. Actual costs will be determined through final design and bidding. Because the Maryland 6th Streetscape construction project is anticipated to span 3 to 4 years, the town's cost share can likely be programmed across the project timeline rather than funded in a single budget year, much as I was saying just a moment ago, far more eloquently in this staff report. The town is in a strong financial position and has the capacity to plan for and absorb this expenditure through the capital improvement plan and annual budget process. Staff is confident that any of the three options is fiscally viable. If the council directs staff to proceed, the appropriate funding mechanism will be incorporated into the next CIP update and budget cycle. SHA has indicated that a decision from the town is needed to allow the design agreement to move forward. Timely direction from the council will enable the state to include the town's preferred lighting scope in the construction contract and avoid design delays. Your strategic plan alignment, sustainability, and ADA considerations are in your packet for your review. Your recommended action this evening is that no formal action is required. Staff simply requests the town council provide direction on which of the three pedestrian lighting options, A, B, or C, it wishes to pursue, or whether the council prefers not to include pedestrian lighting as part of the Maryland 6th Streetscape project. Upon receiving direction, staff will notify SHA and work to advance the appropriate design agreement. And I am available to answer questions.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Councilman Johnson. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I support option A. If we want to do it, we might as well go. Sure, it covers the whole corridor.
Okay. Councilman Sampson?
No questions.
Okay. And do you have an opinion on A, B, or C? Which one that you would like from 301 all the way to Willow, Calvert to Willow, or Calvert to Garrett?
Well, that leads to a question I had.
Then you have a question.
So the question, it's the same question I had before. Take it in the context of our unknown costs for SHA and other things. Do you feel comfortable financially with this? Even though I know it's a
Absolutely.
small- Okay,
Absolutely, Counselor.
so it would be option A.
Option A. Councilman McCormick?
Yes, this may get too much in the weeds. That's okay if we don't have the answers right now. That's not what I'm asking for. Just out of curiosity, one, assuming the budget passes tonight, which I hope it does, personally, my own opinion. There's a policy that's attached to that dealing with pedestrian safety and how some of those improvements can be offset by, once the red lights and speed cameras are paid for, it goes into that reserve fund. Does this fit in that scope?
I believe that it would.
Okay. Do we happen to know, and I know we've asked this question a couple of times, I don't remember if we got an exact number, we might have, and you may not know it off the top of your head. Do we know roughly how much we end up having after the expected cost of the red lights and speed cameras?
I believe it's right in the $30,000 per
Okay.
year ballpark. And again, that's
Got
a
it.
rough number.
Yep. So it won't cover the whole thing, but we could, right, if this fits in that scope and the council wills it, like you said during the budget discussion, that could be another area we pull from as well, correct?
That's correct.
Perfect. I'm in favor of option A.
The thing I like about it is, you look at the SHA share, right? And we're basically buying one, getting one free. I mean, you can't beat that deal, for one. And I really like the option A as well for the entire length, because when I look at, and I remember the first time I ever drove through La Plata, actually, long before I moved here, I remember pulling in down where what is now where the Baldus building is, but I just there was something about the neighborhoods up there, and I ended up moving up there when I first came into town, when I first moved here in Charleston Terrace. That walkable downtown area really hooked me in a little over 20 years ago now, and I think those lights along that corridor, if they start at 301, really visually daytime or nighttime, will pull in interest into our downtown core. I think this really complements what we want to get out of our comprehensive plans and things like that. So I think that's really good. And I think there's a note in here as well that, you know, we have flirted with the idea of putting banners or other flags or other things out. And I know that's an additional cost, right? That's another adder, but nominal comparatively, and part of things that, you know, the HPC is considered and things like that. So I think yeah, option A is the long way of saying it. Whether I go first or last, I have a lot to say, I guess. So
There you go.
thank you. Appreciate.
One thing I have to thank SHA for even bringing this option to us. It's all about collaboration, and thank you, Mr. Stevens, because you do have a good rapport with SHA, and for them to, for him to even bring this forward, Sean to bring this forward, that's really incredible. Councilman Gutenberg kind of touched upon it. When you're on 301 and you're driving by, what brings you into the town? By having the lighting there from 301 all the way up to Garrett, right? Or it's up to Garrett. Oh, Willow Lane.
Yeah.
Up there, you have an opportunity to maybe see a banner there and you're like, what is that all about? Or even the flowers. And I know we've had a long history with flowers. We need to get that one situated, but that just brings that hometown feeling in there, and so important. But also equally important is your safety and visibility. For people walking, we want to make downtown walkable. And I think this is a strong start to that. And then it does go with our, it aligns with our strategic plan as stated. So for that reason, I think you've heard all of us, and I will say option A as well. There's one other thing that they may look at, and I don't know if they're willing to look at this, and I don't know what the expense is, but at MML, we have seen the lights, and I don't know if my two colleagues down here have seen them either, but they have the posts that actually have built in a watering system so that they water the plants there, because that was the big issue we had last time. We had beautiful, beautiful plants, but we didn't have the dedicated staff or the dedicated community to water those. So it was a very expensive 1 week of flowering plants. So I don't know how much more expensive that is, but they've come a long way with just the light posts. They do have those with the waterings in there. And if that fits into the budget, maybe that's something that we explore. All right, thank you very much for that. So we have a full consensus on that.
Madam Mayor, maybe a sustainability agenda item just came up.
I love that. Look at you already thinking. That is awesome. All right, we are on to our AI policy.
All right, Council. The use of artificial intelligence tools in local government is expanding rapidly. AI technologies, including generative AI applications capable of drafting text, summarizing documents, and supporting administrative functions, are now embedded in many of the software platforms and productivity suites that municipal employees use daily. The town of La Plata has recognized the need to establish a clear framework for the responsible, ethical, and safe use of these tools. In 2025 and early 2026, town staff reviewed AI governance models adopted by peer jurisdictions and evaluated guidance issued by the state of Maryland regarding AI use in public sector contexts. Staff also engaged in an internal review of current AI tool usage across departments to better understand where and how these technologies are being applied. The attached draft AI policy establishes the town's expectations for employees, elected officials, contractors, and volunteers who use AI systems in the conduct of town business. The policy is organized around 6 core principles: transparency, privacy, equity, fiscal responsibility, accountability, and safety and security. It defines acceptable and prohibited uses, establishes data protection requirements, assigns oversight responsibility to the town manager, and creates a training and reporting framework. The policy includes an Appendix A, which lists AI tools currently approved for town use. Recognizing that the AI landscape evolves rapidly, the policy delegates authority to the town manager to update the approved tools list administratively without the need for further council action, provided that any additions remain consistent with the policy's core principles and data protection requirements. The policy itself is subject to a full review at least every 4 years or more frequently as warranted by changes in law, technology, or state guidance. Fiscal impact. The AI policy itself does not create direct expenditures. The costs associated with the AI tools listed in Appendix A are addressed through existing departmental budgets and enterprise software agreements. For example, Microsoft 365, which every town employee that uses a computer has that. Paylocity, which is our HR platform. Tyler ERP likely has AI. We're likely transitioning to an OpenGov or ClearGov solution. Those have AI components already embedded in them. So that's really what we're talking about here. Any future decision to procure a new AI tool not covered under an existing contract would be subject to the town's standard procurement and budget approval processes. The policy's emphasis on fiscal responsibility requires that AI investments demonstrate measurable value and cost efficiency, providing a framework for evaluating future requests. You have your strategic plan alignment, your sustainability and ADA considerations are in your packet for your review. Your recommended action this evening is to adopt Resolution 26-30, the Town of La Plata Artificial Intelligence AI policy as presented, effective July 1st, 2026, and further authorize the town manager to amend Appendix A, the list of approved AI tools, administratively without further council action, provided that any such amendments are consistent with the policy's principles and data protection requirements, and that an updated Appendix A is maintained on file with the town clerk and made available to the town council upon request. That concludes my staff report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councilman.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So in the understanding the acceptable use and then the prohibited usages make sense. How well is the town doing at marking documents, whether they're electronic documents, in a way that it is apparent to either an employee or frankly even members of boards and commissions if they're exposed to non-public documents, right? Like sometimes the council can be. How well are they marked in practical application of this, so that we really know as employees or as members of boards and commissions?
Yeah, right now they're not marked at all. We don't have a policy. So part of the reason why we're bringing this forward is because we want to clean some of that up. So I think what I'm envisioning as we roll this out, and there's a reason why we've set the effective date in July, that's not tied to the budget. It's because we need to make sure internally we know what this means when we adopt this policy. So basically there's 3 tiers of risk when you're looking at AI. And when we talk about AI right now, in the common vernacular of today's world, when people say AI, they're most often referring to generative AI. So those are the things that are your chat GPTs or your Claudes that are able to write things for you and do things like that. But AI as a term has existed back into frankly, as far back as the 1950s. If you think about the early iterations of Pandora, the streaming radio, early adopter of AI for large listening models, Netflix, for decision-making. So there are different types of AI, some more riskier than others. What I'm envisioning, once we have a policy adopted, is that we're going to go slow and we're going to be very measured in our approach to AI. And so of the 3 tiers of risk, when you're talking about AI, we want to live in tier 1 initially, which is the very low risk, and it's more administrative. So things like staff reports, maybe these staff reports that I've been writing, maybe we can get some automation in there, help us standardize those and streamline them a little bit. potentially meeting notes from a meeting like this, having an AI agent help us prepare meeting notes. That can save a lot of time for the clerk's office. Things of that nature. So very low risk. I've already started working on either a draft watermark or disclaimer or a footnote to put across the bottom of such a document that says generative AI may have been used in the creation of this document, something along those lines. So I'm thinking along those lines of how we want to make it clear and obvious when anyone, whether it's a member of council, a member of staff, or a member of the public, looks at something and sees that it's written, they know that potentially there was an AI agent that assisted. I do want to call out in the policy itself, though, and this is something that I was very, very careful to draft and incorporate, and it's under the acceptable use. All outputs must be reviewed for accuracy before public release or internal reliance. Okay, so the language that I use with staff and previously and will with this town staff is a human being is going to review every word. The excuse that the AI wrote it will never be tolerated by me.
Yeah, understood. And actually that's an area in my profession outside of this setting where I find that more and more having conversations with other experts is part of that litmus test of how well that individual is using the whether they're generative AI, which is probably the most common, but there's agentic AI tools and other categories of how things are being processed. And so that was part of what I was thinking about when I was looking at this, is in terms of like when we are talking with, like in particular, I know there's AI integrations into, and more coming, I'm sure, into the financial analysis piece. And I think it becomes incredibly important that we have dialogue with staff, especially if those tools are being used, because of the risks of the not having a human in the loop. And I think in my personal experience, I find that I worry about subject matter experts getting atrophy of the critical analysis that the human still must do. And especially, I think, in municipal government, where we have to have personal conversations with a lot of folks, whether it's residents or other stakeholders that we have to engage with. It's really important that we own what the decisions are.
And sir, Article 9, training and reporting. We've also written that in there. Employees must complete AI use training and report suspected misuse errors or bias to their supervisor or town manager. So tried to hit that in the policy itself. In fact, when I distributed this with the leadership team, the chief was the first one to come back to me and was like, when is the AI training, Chuck? I'm like, I don't know. That's why we're not starting this till July if it gets adopted, because we got to figure that out. So it could be very basic to start with, could be me and a PowerPoint with the LT and then trickle down from there. But again, my intention for rolling out AI use in the town will be very intentional, very slow to start, but very, very transparent, not only with council, but with the public. And we'll figure out a way to make sure that we mark anything appropriately.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I read the policy 3 or 4 times. I thought it was well written. I liked it. I think something that's sorely needed. And so I had nothing but positive thoughts and opinions on the policy.
Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, no questions. Thanks.
Thank you for this. This is just an up and coming thing. It's been around for a while, but it's really quite common now for AI use. And MML will have an AI conference, seminar again, which I'm sure MML will be able to share some of the slides and everything that might help in the training too. But I am 100% on board with this. It's just, there are no excuses. I like how you have a human reviewing that, but work smarter, not harder sometimes, right? So
I will say, council, that if any of you are feeling like the town of La Plata is behind, we are not at all. ICMA, the International City County Managers Association, did a survey last year, so it may be a little bit dated, but I believe at the time, this is from memory, it was over 70% of government surveyed did not have an AI policy at all.
Right.
Okay, so even if that number has come down a little bit in the last year, we're still very much on the forefront of this effort to get a policy in place. So
I appreciate
congratulations if
that.
you adopt it.
So I'm looking for a consensus to move this forward to legislation. If you are in favor, please indicate by saying aye. If not, nay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consensus is that we will see it in just a wee bit. Brings us to 4.5, Employee Handbook Update. Mr. Stevens.
Okay, and for this one, I'd like to call the HR director forward while I find my page. Okay. So Monica Kennedy, the HR director, just joined us at the table, and she'll be available to answer questions after I conclude the staff report. So as part of implementing the adopted FY27 budget and continuing regular handbook maintenance, updates are needed to the vacation accrual policy to reflect the revised leave cap and to add a cell of leave policy establishing parameters for the limited payout of excess accrued leave. Additional policy updates include civility in the workplace to reinforce expectations for professional and respectful conduct, gift acceptance to clarify when employees may accept gifts under the existing ethics section, workplace communication to provide clear guidance on appropriate communication channels for employment and operational matters, and heat-related illness prevention and management to comply with state requirements and provide guidance on prevention, response, and employee protection. Together, these updates provide clear expectations, support compliance, and promote consistent workplace practices. And council, I'm going to remind you, I know we said this probably the last 2 or 3 meetings in a row, but in the context of the APFO and how I wanted to really condition the staff and council and the public, like updates of this nature are routine, they're expected, and they're not something to be treated as one-offs or anything bad at all. This is natural, expected administrative grooming of policy documents. And that's really probably how I should have started my staff report. The fiscal impact, the adopted 27 budget includes the anticipated financial impact of the sale of leave policy, assuming all eligible employees elect to sell the maximum allowable of 40 hours. Establishing the revised vacation accrual cap also supports more accurate tracking of leave liability and budgeting future fiscal years. For the heat-related illness policy, prevention materials and supplies such as water are already included in departmental budgets, and the policy may help reduce costs by enabling early recognition, prevention, and response. The policy aligns with your strategic plan. Sustainability and ADA considerations are in your packet. And your recommended action this evening is to adopt ordinance 26-11 revision of the employee handbook approving revised and new entries to the handbook as presented.
Thank you very much. All right. Council, any questions for our HR director or Mr. Stevens? Go.
Sure. Yeah. So for myself, reading through this, there was 2 areas that I had some concerns with. One and probably the most important one to me is the dynamic around the rules for communications with the council. So the way I'm interpreting it is there's the chain of command rules, which make perfect sense to me. Understand that, live with that myself every day. The wording around specific communications with the council bothers me for the following reason. The council has explicit rules set out in charter and in our rule of procedure that prohibits us from interfering with the tasking of staff. And so when I read this, the thing that bothered me is this puts a consequence, even though it is, I understand it's tiered and graduated, and that I don't believe that your intent would be for town staff to administratively just drop the hammer on somebody like for first offense or a minor infraction kind of thing. However, the way it reads, I fear is unintentionally too cooling and potentially lifts the responsibility somewhat off of where it should really squarely sit, which is with each of us five having to honor our oath to the charter and to respect for our own rule of procedures. So what I would rather see in a policy document is something that emphasized that dynamic more, or simply omitting or significantly softening that language such that you rely on the practical application of the chain of command rule, and then the council communication part really rests more with the responsibility of the council members. Is my feeling on it in its current form. And then the other part, it's maybe more of a nit, but when I looked at the some of the other policies on sort of low intensity behaviors, it got kind of specific, and I went out poking around at some other town employee handbooks, and I wasn't seeing like equivalent level of language there, and so it just seemed similar to to me it seemed like that was sort of a similar pattern, if you will, in the nature of kind of laying that out. And maybe it was in my view is just going maybe possibly too far with over explaining maybe some of those things. And I think with those two things paired together, my feeling is I would rather see this policy updated rather than adopted tonight from my point of view.
Can I respond?
Sure. Yes,
Okay.
please.
So there were a couple of things there that you hit on, and I'll try to address them.
Mhm. So
First, communications with town council. The council does have its own set of rules, and of course, so that's not really what this is specifically addressing or attempting to address. So what this would address is if an employee repeatedly went around the supervisor, assistant town manager, or myself to go to council, whether council acknowledges that or reacts to that or not. Let's say council acts completely appropriately, does nothing, and refers it to the town manager. Okay. But if we have a repeated instance of that, our current handbook doesn't allow I have no tools to address it. Okay. So it's important that we set the stage with the handbook of what it really is. Okay. It's a policy document, but it's also the very, very, very first thing that is going to be requested during discovery when there's a wrongful termination suit. The very first thing, before they even ask me for performance appraisals, they are going to ask me for a copy of the employee handbook, because this sets the stage. And I use the analogy of, it's like when you were in high school and you went into your first week of class, and every teacher, you walk in there, they lay down the law, and you thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be the worst class in history. Well, as the class went on, it turned out to be a great year, and the teacher never ever really even had to employ that set of rules. But if the teacher didn't have that set of rules, there was no recourse to address. That's what this handbook does, and that really goes to your second point as well about the low intensity behaviors. So the town absolutely employs progressive disciplinary actions. Absolutely, because we never ever want to get sued, and we never want to terminate an employee. That is never a desired outcome, right? By the time we hired someone, invested in them to train them, we want them to be here. So we want to do everything we can to keep them here. We never want to get to this end of the continuum of discipline, but it happens. Every once in a while it happens. And if we don't have tools like this on our side, it makes it very difficult if and when every once in a while an employee wants to file a wrongful termination suit. So a lot of what's in here will probably never, ever see the light of day, to be honest with you. But if we need it, it'd be great to have it, because it's going to make our town attorney really, really happy that we have it. And we did vet this through our risk management team, legit, and the attorneys there vetted this. So I don't challenge or question that you didn't find it in other handbooks. But I bet if we were to call the attorneys representing those organizations and say, would you like to have it in your handbook? I think you would get a different answer.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Councilman McCormick?
No questions.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes, a few. I heard your explanation and thank you. I think without getting too much into the performative appraisal process, how you do that all, as being a leader, we know performative coaching or feedback is very subjective, right? And when you go to substantiate something, it's usually who have notes and who don't, right? So I think the comments that was made about like the very detailed of the eye rolling or shrugging of the shoulders, I would look at that as just like professional conduct. And I wanted to go into the handbook and really read line by line, like does it address professional conduct in general? Because either way, whether if it does today, it's still subjective to the leader that's providing the feedback, whether you say it's eye rolling or not. I guess that's my concern with, while I acknowledge this may never see the light of day, but coaching is very subjective on things like this.
So having that very, very detailed language here is important during the onboarding process. And maybe Monica could talk about that, but being able to give examples or even to your, not even onboarding, but let's say you have a new manager, okay? Let's say you got a brand new manager promoted up through the ranks and now, from bud to boss kind of situation. And they come to HR and they're like, I've got this employee and I don't know how to put my finger on it, but they're just disrespectful. It's unprofessional conduct. Being able to go to the handbook and saying, okay, well, talk to me about the behaviors. Well, it's the shrugging of the shoulders, it's the rolling of the eyes, it's the deep sighs when I ask him to do something. Like, okay, that's actually in the handbook, and we can talk to that employee about that, and we can write that, because I agree with you, counselor. It's got to be written, right? And so you're never gonna hurt my feelings by saying we got a document. So I think it's important to have it in because it gives good backup, not only as employees are coming into the organization, it sets the clear standard of what is acceptable and what is not, but it really helps those new managers give them something that they can go back to and then have that very meaningful conversation with the employee. I don't know. Do you want to?
No, I think that's largely my intent when I put this together, is because we do have a lot of new managers here and we do have some that maybe haven't had formal training. And so this is a tool for them to use to help them recognize when they're seeing it, and then also the employees to recognize to be more aware of what their own actions are and how that could be perceived, and how the town treats that and views it under our professionalism and what is appropriate for workplace action. So this is a good jumping off spot for them to use to begin those coaching sessions, to begin to identifying what it means. Because I know, like, I never got that kind of training. When I became a manager, it was a sink or swim. But if I had something like this that I could reference and had a document, like, I think that would have been super helpful to me, if I was in a position where I didn't have somebody that taught me what it was, or I was too afraid to ask somebody about a behavior.
Yeah, you both are doing a good job explaining the intent, and I appreciate that. When I look at performance management, and it's not our role to coach or direct your teams on performance issues, it is still very subjective, right? And I think you think about the word new manager or people leader. When I started my journey 8 years ago, sometimes you want to make a name for yourself, right? Whether you do it or not, and somebody causes a behavior. I guess I look at a two-prong approach. The manager have very descriptive coaching mechanism. He or she don't need to think about it, right? She rolled her eyes. It violates Section 7. I had 3 conversations. They're still doing it. From an employee standpoint, this place really sucks because, like, I can't roll my eyes, I can't shrug my shoulders, and it might not be at Chuck or TJ. It's just I shrug my shoulders. I mean, look, I'm doing it right now. I do it all the time. Like, I shrug my shoulders. So I understand the intent. And I guess to go back to my first question, and this is the one time you get to hear me, I didn't do my homework on the employee handbook. Is there a professional conduct like language in there? And if you don't have the answer now, that's okay. I wonder what that section is cover what you all are trying to achieve.
Yeah, there are throughout the handbook references to, like, behavior and expectations, because there's a lot of there's a lot of behavior and a lot of performance-based policies in here. So it's just one more place to reiterate that is the expectation of workplace.
Sure. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you. And then I'm going to move on to the I guess that was a part of the civility. The communication with the town council. I guess my first instance would be, while you say this is routine and an administrative function and is common, have you had an issue with council with this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I'm just making sure. My other question is, and and again, I didn't do my homework reading the handbook this weekend. Let's just say TJ is the town manager and an employee wants to complain on me. What is the mechanism? Is it to the town attorney? Is it spelled out in the handbook?
Say it again. Someone wants to file a complaint against the town manager?
Yes, yeah. So like,
Yeah, there's a process for that.
Well, yeah, so, so the communication language in here is to use your chain of command, or I hate the chain of command. We're not military. I try to use organizational structure.
sure.
I know chain of command is very common. A lot of us have military backgrounds. It comes naturally. But to use the organizational structure, but in the event that it is the town manager, then I don't have it explicitly
And
said.
that's fine.
But I believe that, they would either come to me or the assistant town manager or to the attorney would probably be the top three people that they should know. And that would be communicated to the employees. Because yeah, we realize you can't.
Right, yeah,
go there.
I mean, it's not a major concern, but when I think about this and I attended, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds. You said it's been vetted, and I don't know if Maryland even has a whistleblower clause, or if they do, if they don't, that's irrelevant. It is very prescriptive, both of these sections, and that's, I understand that's your intent, is to be very prescriptive with it. Without blurring the lines, right? We recognize the policy decision and the operational carryout of those decisions. A simple inquiry. Oh, I can't talk to you, right? Like, it's all in how does the colleague or the employee interpret it. And I don't think we're having that problem, but that could be a concern. And Chuck, I see you're about to respond.
Well, I want to read the language right out of what we're proposing. So it says any direct communication with the town council regarding, and then it gives examples. So, internal operations, personnel matters, departmental concerns, complaints, or other work-related issues may create an actual or perceived conflict of interest. So we're not saying that an employee can't come up. That's not what this is saying. But if I turned my microphone off, sorry. Yeah, people say they have an open door policy. I used to say that, right? I don't say that anymore because it gets misinterpreted. Because what would happen is, and what I learned is that people can come in and you start talking about the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was great. I saw it. But as soon as that turns into, hey, it'd be okay if I take leave next week. Right? Because that's what happens in those kinds of engagements. And it's like, okay, stop. You need to go talk to your manager. So it's fine if someone wants to come up and talk to council about the Super Bowl or about the, whatever just happened, anything, come up and talk to you. But if that turns into a conversation about, and they're spelled out here, so, internal operations or personnel matters. I don't like the way my department head is doing this, that, the other. We could be doing it better. That's not a council thing. That is operational. All I would ask a council in that case is to say, hold the phone. Why don't you go talk to your department head? If you're not comfortable, talk to, and then use the organizational structure, right? There's always somebody that you can talk to. And if I'm the problem, there's other people you can talk to.
Okay. Yeah, if I can finish, please. All right, moving on to the accrual and carryover. I know we're selling the language will be approved as 40. Now, how does this work with, I think year one, employee has the ability to sell up to 80 is the conversation we had on March
No,
17th?
it's 40.
Right, the intent was 40, but I remember reading a staff report somewhere that for year one, starting in January. they had
During
the
our
ability-
initial conversations about how do we want this to look, whether it's a 1 or 2 year rollout, then it was, does 40 or 80 make more sense? And the end result was based on the data and based on the financial liability and the balances that everybody has, 40 makes more sense.
Okay,
And so 40 is in the policy.
Yeah, I understand what's in the policy. I think when we was at the table, what was explained to us, and at least what I was aligned with understanding was the program would be 40 hours as the intent with the option in year one up to 80. And that's why I was in alignment with it. And I think I remember asking a very explicit question about that and about the 1 5-year anniversary marker and what does that payout look like. So I, notwithstanding the heat related illness prevention and management language you all have in here, which from what I understand, is prescribed by state law and a good risk management practice. I think there's a lot of massaging to go back and bring this back before council with a little bit of concerns, at least from my standpoint.
All right, so my comments. Thank you very much. He's,
I thought he wanted to.
well, we all go around then seconded. So thank you for that. I used to run HR back in the day, and some of these tools would have been very, very helpful. Everything now has to be documented. And I roll a shrug. Unfortunately, it's the world we live in because people are very litigious and they're going to sue you because they felt wrong. That's their feelings and they have the right to sue. But if we do not document, that is our fault. We're not doing our due diligence. And to hear our town manager say that this is a tool that would help him, that's all I needed to hear. It's, I have done this job for 9 years, and I've seen a number of examples that have been given tonight that have come to council and to council members. Not this council, from what I understand. I haven't been briefed on that one, but previous councils. Employees would usurp their organizational structure and go to council. And it puts us into a very difficult position as well. So I thank you for that. I have no suggestions, edits, comments on that. What I think you did was fantastic because you all run operations. Thank you. And I know Councilman Sampson has a question too.
Yes, it's more of a comment than a question. First, I want to say, I think under the circumstances, I think you did an excellent job. Your job is a thankless job. Nobody's ever happy. That's somebody who used to be a HR director. You're always under the gun. And when something goes wrong, you're always wrong. So I do understand that. So, this is more towards something that I had brought up before. And I just wanted to bring it up because you triggered my memory on this. And I'm not going to go into it, but I think it is relevant here. I had brought up before about some lessons learned. Okay. And I said, we put that off and that's fine. But this conversation, especially something you were saying, Mr. Stevens, how does, and this is not necessarily a question, it's a rhetorical question, but the question does come up when there is something fundamentally wrong operationally that happens, that is repeated, that goes on and on. What role or what communication does the council have? And that was one of the things I wanted to get in that previous discussion that I wanted about lessons learned, because there is a question of, and I agree, I think everybody's in agreement here. Council is not involved in operations. Got that. Council's not direct staff. That's not our lane. Got it. But if there is something that is persistent, that is fundamentally wrong, that is ongoing, and I think Councilman Johnson kind of touched on this, like a whistleblower or something like that. This may not necessarily be the mechanism for that, but it does bring up that question, like if something is ongoing, somebody sees something, or somebody believes they see something, or somebody knows something, and they, for whatever reason, cannot communicate through those channels, what is our role, if any? And so that's just something I just wanted to bring up, because that was one of the things that I really wanted to discuss in those lessons learned, because I think that was a problem, whether that was the individual who was in charge, I'm talking about at that particular department, unable to get information out from those people, communications, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Counselor, I know you said it's rhetorical, but I think I can try to answer at least part of it. And so, and I think council, because I don't feel like this council has gotten into the operations of the town. I mean, I really don't believe that you have. But that doesn't mean that this council doesn't have the responsibility to the constituents to make sure that the town's being successful. So if council is uneasy or uncomfortable or dissatisfied with whatever it is, operationally, the streets getting paved, the potholes, response to residents' complaints for law enforcement, or I saw you over there, Chief. I just want to see if you were paying attention. You know, whatever it may be, call it out to me. And you said repeat it, and I think that's really important because you know what, I'll address it. And if I address it and I address it satisfactorily, then okay, you know, Bob's your uncle, we move on. If you have to tell me 2 or 3 times, like, hey, roads aren't getting paved, hey, why is the water quality report, the water quality report's going to go out in June, correct?
Yes.
Right, okay. That's huge. That's operation. What is one of our core services is delivering safe quality drinking water to our residents. Let's hypothetically say that the water quality report was going to say, hey, the water quality of the town is not safe. Okay, that's operational for sure, but I would fully expect this council to ask me what is going on and hold me accountable to that. So there's that. Now, there's a second component to what you asked, though, and when you start talking about an employee that sees something in a whistleblower situation, that's something entirely different, and we can address. Ideally, we just want the employee to talk to their manager, talk to their supervisor, talk to their department head. If none of those are acceptable, we say, please come to HR, please come to the assistant town manager. Michelle has a tremendous rapport with the employees. She's been here for 37 years. Come to me. If not, and if you're not comfortable with any of that, reach out to the town attorney. One thing that's on my list of things to get to is establishing some kind of anonymous reporting line for the organization. They're out there. It's usually a fee for service thing with an 800 number. I'm familiar with them. It's on my list. I've got other things that I want to get to first, like an appraisal system, which we don't have, which we're working on. So there are other things. So there is a gap there, absolutely. But I think it's different that council, yeah, don't direct operations, but absolutely hold your town manager accountable for the smooth operations of the town.
One follow-up question?
Go ahead.
All right. Director Kennedy, is it practice that we as a town do employee surveys where they give feedback on these kinds of things?
Like a pulse survey?
Yes.
We have not done one, but I definitely have the tools to do one, and I've built templates. I don't know that we've felt that we needed one at any particular time because usually I put those out when I start like hearing some things or maybe there's some stirrings, and I want to try to get ahead of that. I'll put one out. But I'm also always very cautious about like not overdoing it, because if you put out a survey and you get feedback, you have to be able to take action, right? Otherwise people are going to stop answering your surveys.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I can, and I have the tools to do it for sure.
Yeah. And so I not suggesting any specific action, but what made me think of that is just in the way I was reading this myself, I wondered how an employee would receive some of the language, right? And that's what made me like initially start digging into it. So from a policy perspective only, I'd be interested in indicators of how general climate kind of perceptions are, of which this could be a component.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
And we could have a situation where, we approve this, we put it forward, and, like the town manager said, this is a living and breathing document that can change. And,
Sure.
If we put something like this out in the world, solicit the feedback, and then maybe come back to you in a couple of months and be like, we want to redo this, and so that is a possibility. And we'll do that, like if that's if it needs to happen,
Sure.
like for
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, so we're looking for a consensus to move this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if I
Yes.
can, I am not at all clear on the massaging that was recommended staff go back and do. Because I heard Councilor Johnson.
So, yeah, I was going for round
Do
2.
you think we take a consensus to move it forward as is? And if there isn't a consensus, then we get the direction
We was
on
on,
it?
yeah, we was on round 2. Also, other people made 2 comments and I would like to make more,
Oh,
please. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't understand you.
No worries. Notwithstanding any other explanation that you all gave, I'm going back to the leave back now. There was a conversation, and it was written somewhere, and I can't find it. And I realized I sent an email for my questions, and I didn't get an answer back email. We ended up having a conversation on March 17th. But there was somewhere written, I don't know if it was in a binder or if in the email about, yes, I do remember the 40-year, that was, or the 40-hour per year was the intent, with year one option up to 80. So after that March 17th conversation, when you mentioned you made the decision based on data, was that after the budget hearing, like staff work, or was that in the budget hearing conversation or the workshop, excuse me?
From what I remember from the workshop, the conversation was that it was something that was under consideration, but it wasn't that this was the policy that I was putting forth. Because at that time, I did not have a firm solution, and the budget that was presented, that was included in that, would have only been on that 40 hours. Because that's what I had done all my calculations on.
Yeah, all of the budget that day was prescriptive. That's why we had it, to get the intent of council to bring back the finalized document. And unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm almost positive there was 80 hours for year one language written somewhere. But for the same reasons I mentioned earlier, I do, notwithstanding all the explanations you gave and your reasoning form, I appreciate that. I'm still have some concerns about the language with the low intensity behaviors and the lease sellback for year one. And the second question, just a question, I know I asked this before, I know we do it, move forward for consensus is already on the agenda. I think it just go forward anyway to legislation.
Any other comments? All right, so I'm looking for a consensus to move this forward for legislation. If you are in favor, please indicate by saying aye. If not, say no. In favor of moving it forward for legislation?
Aye.
Any opposed? So it's moving forward. All right, so next is the Dorchester Community Center discussion. Mr. Stevens.
Okay, council. During your February 10th, 2026 meeting, Town Council received a comprehensive briefing on the history, status, and challenges of the Dorchester Community Center project. Council directed staff to pursue two parallel work streams coming out of that meeting. The first was to assess the viability of potential operating partners, which staff accomplished through a notice of intent process, and two, to commission a feasibility study with a rough order of magnitude construction cost estimates. Both efforts are now complete. This summary presents the results and seeks council direction on whether to proceed with formal procurement. So let's start with the operator viability and the results of the notice of intent. So in early 2026, following that meeting in February, town issued a notice of intent to identify qualified nonprofit or community-based organizations interested in operating the DCC. The town received responses from 7 organizations representing a broad and diverse range of expertise. Respondents fell into 3 general categories: youth mentoring and leadership. Those were organizations with established track records in trauma-informed mentoring and leadership development for middle and high school students. Workforce and technology education, firms specializing in digital literacy, AI-assisted training, and digital futures programming to prepare youth for the modern economy. And the third was comprehensive social services, partners with deep roots in Charles County, offering programming for individuals with disabilities, housing stability services, and family self-sufficiency. Some of the key findings from the responses. Respondents proposed programming that would utilize the full range of specialized spaces in the conceptual design, including the commercial kitchen, makerspace, computer lab, and gymnasium. Several applicants currently operate similar multi-use facilities and have demonstrated management capacity. Multiple respondents are already active in La Plata and Charles County with existing relationships with local schools, healthcare providers, and the Department of Social Services. Organizations ranged from those with diversified small-scale funding models to one with over $135 million in annual revenue, indicating a depth of organizational capacity across the applicant pool. The conclusion of that process is that Staff has confidence that a capable and willing operating partner or a collaborative group of partners exists to successfully manage the DCC. And this directly addresses the concerns raised by the prior council regarding operator viability. So what I'm trying to say, and I'll say very plainly, is when we talked about this in February, there were really two questions. One is, who's going to run this thing and who's out there? We didn't even know if anybody was out there. I'm confident after going through this process, which didn't have a brand new building that someone could go look at and envision and get excited about, we got some really good responses. And so I am confident that if council decides to move forward with this project, that there will be a point in time where construction may be underway. There will probably be more formal design drawings, that if we do go out with an RFP, that we will receive proposals from qualified entities to partner with. And then at that point, then we can start the dialogue about what does that partnership look like and what would that mean to the town and how would that work? We can't do that tonight, but we needed to be able to answer your question about, is there even a partner out there? And I am confident there is a partner out there. Okay, that was question number one. The second question was about, you saw what the Neighborhood Design Center did and wow, that looks great. But there was some back of the napkin math that we talked about that night. It's like, yeah, we've got 1.25 million in grants, but what is this going to cost us? So that led us to doing what we did and finding CAO Barrett and Patuxent Architects and coming together to try and give council just an idea of what could be possible, a phased approach so that the total project cost was, I think it was over $6 million. You don't have to bite all of that at once. That was a phased approach. You could go out with a phase one at a cost of about 3.1 million, offset by 1.25 in grant funding, which leaves a residual of about 1.85, something like that. If I'm doing math correctly. Okay, that council would have to say, okay, because that was the other question you had is, well, if we say we want to continue with DCC, what does that mean to the pocketbook? I think the presentation you got tonight and what I'll read here in the rest of my staff report kind of fills in that picture for you. Now, you're never going to have a complete picture. You're never going to have all the information that you would like on the dais. We do our very best to give you all the information so that you can make an informed decision. But I'll finish up my staff report here and talk about what you heard from Tony and Brent, and then we can have a conversation about what that might look like. So as I've already said, staff engaged CAO Barrett, which is civil engineer, and Patuxent Architects to conduct a formal feasibility study of the site at 402 Potomac. The study, completed in May of 2026, confirms that the site is physically and technically suitable for the proposed development. And the key findings include what you heard in your presentation this evening. The approximately 2.1 acre site can accommodate the proposed building program, parking, stormwater management, and outdoor recreation areas. Existing public water and sanitary sewer infrastructure are available and adequate to support the proposed uses. Existing structures on the site are not viable for reuse. Demolition is anticipated. The site's current zoning, industrial high, does not permit community center uses by right. Rezoning or discretionary land use approval will be required. The site's adjacency to central business and residential R3 districts supports a rezoning to CB, which is consistent with the proposed use. The feasibility study recommends a phased development approach with the following rough order of magnitude costs. And you saw those earlier in the presentation. But for phase one, which was the build out of the gymnasium / multi-purpose assembly building at approximately 7,600 feet, the rough order of magnitude cost was about $3.1 million. Phase two, which would provide entry control and community lounge at approximately 1,900 square feet, would add an additional $870,000 to implement that phase. And phase three, which would bring in the remainder of the vision, the community support areas, the future expansion, including a potential daycare, at approximately 7,500 square feet at a cost of approximately $2.17 million. So full build out of all phases, single story, and we could also build out a second floor if we needed to. but a single story between 14,000 and 15,000 square feet at about $6.1 billion. Phase 1 is the recommended immediate priority. It delivers the core gymnasium and multipurpose assembly function. That was the facility's primary community benefit and is designed to operate independently as subsequent phases are delayed. All estimates include a 20% soft cost allowance for design, engineering, and permitting. These are planning level figures subject to refinement through design process. Fiscal impact. The town has secured $1.25 million in state grants requiring no local match. Phase 1 construction is estimated at approximately $3.12 million. Staff will identify the funding gap and explore supplemental sources, including additional state grants, ARPA eligible funding, or capital reserves as part of the formal procurement process. The phased approach provides flexibility to align construction scope with available funding. Long-term operational costs will depend on the operating model ultimately selected. The operator RFP process will produce detailed proposals, including operating budgets and sustainability plans. Staff will present fiscal projections for council review prior to execution of any operating agreement. And we covered strategic plan alignment and sustainability and ADA considerations during your February presentation, and they're also included in your packet. So this evening, staff, we've completed the 2 work streams directed by the council. The results, I believe, are encouraging. There's a strong pool of potential operating partners, and the site is physically and technically feasible for the proposed development. So what we're recommending for you this evening is that you authorize the staff to move forward with architectural design and engineering services for phase 1 for the Dorchester Community Center, consistent with the program established during the 2022 Neighborhood Design Center process. Simultaneously authorize staff to issue an RFP for facility operations using a transparent and competitive process. Direct staff to return to council with a funding gap analysis, operational cost projections, and a recommended integrated timeline for design, operator selection, and construction procurement prior to execution of any contract. Direct staff to initiate site preparation activities, including procurement of demolition services for the existing structures on the Dorchester Community Center site at 402 Potomac and 400 Dorchester. Direct staff to identify a suitable alternate location and develop a plan for construction or acquisition of a replacement facility for the storage of the Department of Public Works equipment currently housed in the existing warehouse structure at 402 Potomac. So all of that to say, council, I think you have enough information. You have rough order of magnitude numbers. We have one, because the core foundational question that we need to answer to draw us all the way back to the February brief is we have these grants, and if we don't use them, we're going to lose them, and that's bad. It would be better if we're not going to use them to let the state know we're not going to use them and give them back. And that's what drove this conversation about Dorchester. And so I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you may have, and looking for your direction.
Thank you very much. I'm actually going to start off on this one. We've heard from the community since 2017, and it was an initiative of the police that have brought this forward, that there's a need. When you, and I'm sure when our council went door knocking, they probably heard some of the residents say there's nothing to do. And this community center is an opportunity to give the community a place to go for, that's not an outdoor sports, to do things inside, to a gathering place, to keep our kids safe, tutoring and mentoring. And I know we looked at donations. Island Music donated musical instruments, and there is an interest here. The biggest concern, which you have so eloquently laid out, was the finances. You just said, if I heard you right, if there's a will, there's a way. We can find the financing. We've got the 1.2, it's really 1.35 because we have 100,000 that was earmarked for ARPA funding. But the way that I know, even though we're in a very tight budget with the state, that we were able to get funding for other things, even though that was kind of, we got it to the $800,000 for the library. There's money out there. I think that we just need to, and I know staff does an amazing job, but there are more funding out there. We need to reach out to our delegation and put in requests. And there's going to be a turnover in at least our state senator. So this might be an opportunity for the elected officials to really stump for having more funding for that DCC. So I am all in favor for your recommendation of moving this forward. So with that, I will start off. I'll go back to the order with Councilman Gutenberg.
Okay. Yeah. So when we talked about this back in February, so I am happy to hear about the outlook for operators. And I live actually fairly close to this neighborhood. I know it well. My children went over to daycare over in that area for many years. And when I look at the older neighborhoods like this one in La Plata, because of the older development style and when we have new development coming in, they are delivered with amenities, right? And the older parts of the town like this don't have them, and that is an area we've had parks and recreation studies, and we've over the years, and these kinds of things get talked about, and there's definitely a need. So I am in favor, without going on too long, I'm in favor of getting the initial phase going. What I'm curious about is what are the outlooks for some of one of the things you mentioned was going after additional potential grants and areas of potential support as we long term. This is a very expensive endeavor, even with just phase one. There is a need for things like this. So I'm curious. I'll let you talk.
So I think your question is, how will we go out and try to find other grant sources or other funding revenue streams to try and cover the capital costs? Honestly, that's just staff work. That's just having someone dedicated and starting the search. I mean, some organizations are large enough that you actually have a grant administrator that I would turn to and say, go find me a grant for something like this. We don't have that. So it would just fall on staff to take on that responsibility as we go through here. But that's certainly not to guarantee or imply that there are other funding sources out there. I think if council wants to move forward with this, I think you got to plan worst case scenario, which would be that it's a $3.1 million project. We already have 1.2 in grants, which is pretty good. That's over a third of the money that we need for this project. So we're going to build a community asset to benefit the entirety of our community in an area, in a neighborhood that really lends itself to needing this, because it's not one of the newer ones that already has stuff. So I think there's a lot of community benefit to be had here, and we're going to get it at 2/3 the cost. So that's, I think, what council needs to be thinking about. We'll do our very best to try and find other money, but we can't count on it.
Yeah, understood. And I think this, when I look at it, this is a really good place to invest it because there's already sidewalk streets there. It is a higher density neighborhood. Even the townhouse sections are higher density, but there's a number of apartment buildings nearby, and so I think I'm not worried about the space not being used and the asset not being used. It's more a factor of a little bit of the sticker shock with the multi-phased approach and how that all goes. But I think what we looked at and what was presented tonight and the artifacts that we were given ahead of time, even phase one is a gigantic improvement in what is available. The outside spaces that have been invested in over there on Caroline Drive, those I think those are well used outside areas, but there's no, as Mayor James said, indoor spaces, inclement weather, wintertime, those kinds of things. So I think this offers a lot of opportunities for us to invest in young people, young families, and in a neighborhood that I think will definitely definitely use it. So I would support moving ahead with phase A or phase one. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman McCormick.
Yeah, and thank you for those comments, Councilman Gunberg. I had similar questions, so let me just get right into it with you, Mr. Stevens. So the phase one recommendation, $3.12 million is the estimated cost here, right? And you talked about how we have roughly 1.3 million in grants. It's about a third of the cost. But what I heard, and I may be wrong, so just correct me, is we do need phase two as well. There's an option not to approve phase three if we don't want to go that far. But phase two has to be approved because it's the entry control, it's the community lounge. It was recommended by the folks that put this report together that those two actually should even be combined. So are we really talking about 33% of the cost being covered here, or are we talking about a $4 million project?
No, I don't think so. Specifically, and I'm looking from the line in my staff report. So this was designed to be implemented in phases. Phase one, you can undertake phase one and never do phase two or three.
Okay, so that answers my question right there. Okay.
That's
So,
my understanding.
yep.
I will confirm that with Tony.
okay, please do. Yep, because if that's the case, that answers every question I had. If that's not the case, it leads to a couple more questions, which I think highlights the importance of what Councilman Gunberg was talking about, which is, I understand you can't guarantee tonight on May 12th if we can get more grants or more funding approved from the state or federally or whatever organizations out there to do it. But I think that just highlights the importance of it. So if it's just phase one and we've got roughly 33% of the cost covered here, I think this is something that, again, the community has asked for, which is why when you started with the historic context here back in February when you gave us the report, I would challenge, why was there no action for 5 years if the community wanted this? But I think that this puts us in a position to make a leadership call, which is, okay, we've got about a third of the funding. This is something we know the community wants based off of feedback. Are we willing to foot that bill or not? So if it's just phase one, I'm a lot more comfortable going through this report. I just want to ensure that phase two is not mandatory because it's literally the entryway and the control way for the community.
Correct. So
Okay.
though I found the line, it says phase one in their staff report. Phase one is the recommended immediate priority. It
Yep.
delivers the core gymnasium and multi-purpose assembly function and is designed to operate independently as subsequent phases are complete.
Perfect.
That is what I requested of CAO Barrett when we went through it.
Got
So
it.
I'd be shocked. I think what I heard, and I understand as a civil engineer,
Yep.
it goes back to those economies of scale and mobilizing construction. And it's kind of like, that's less than $1 million. If
I
you
just,
can get
again,
phase
I just
two-
want to make sure that we're not beholden to that because while, I get it, we have a $22 million budget and all that. It's still an extra million on top of something. It's not something I feel that we should just hand wave past, right? To the point of this report, and I think you did a great job of explaining it. Phase one alone offers a community gymnasium, a multi-use room. It's something that hasn't been there before. Councilman Gunberg did a great job of laying out the area and what this could bring. I just want to ensure we don't have the wrong price is all I'm saying.
No, I believe that phase one can be implemented without two and three. I'll confirm that for council.
Okay.
I would ask that council take that at face value tonight for
Understood.
decision making, because there's still a lot of time before we spend a penny.
Understood.
So-
Yep. Understood on this report. So like I said earlier, with that context, I'm a lot more comfortable. So thank you for that.
Councilman Sampson?
Yes, I'm supportive. I support this project, phase one completion. I am not comfortable going on to phase two and three. The old saying, hope is not a feasible course of action, and I don't know where that funding would come from. But I'm all in for phase one. I think, just like Councilman McCormick just said, it's an improvement. It's something that's needed. It will benefit the community. It appears to be financially within our means. And so I think that's the prudent course. So I support going forward phase one.
All right, Councilman Johnson?
Yes, I have a few comments and some questions. So one, as I've always said, since we sat here, it's not lost on me why this came to concept. I think And I'm glad to hear that you have some viable operators. That's promising. That was one of the major concerns. Checkbox. We're past that point. My second concern is, while we are fortunate and we have a really healthy surplus, not only that, this council have the ability to tax and bond and build out a capital improvement plan for our infrastructure. I think the cost in general, I wouldn't say it's sticker shock, but it is $6 million. And while we're only talking about one phase tonight to get the ball rolling, I appreciate that. You know, so the concept, and it's not lost on me why it's here, I support that. The problem is it's going to be an additional cost. And where's that cost going to come from? And I know we probably won't figure that out tonight, whether we raise taxes, whether we bond it out. But my other question is, we do have a few things in the pipeline, and I know we have the ability, and you have, and staff have built out a capital improvement plan for various infrastructure in town that is very relevant and will be coming to fruition in the next foreseeable years that we got to make investments into. But the other piece is the major facility plan will be back sometime next year about facility usage, and we don't know what that price tag is. And like you said, it's a recommendation. It don't mean council have to action it. But I think about the amount of costs that are coming. It's not lost to me why this project was a conversation on why it should or need to be done. I just think about the future multi-million-dollar costs that are going to come, and somebody got to pay the bill.
Yeah, Council, I'd harken back to the presentation you had from Baker Tilly at your last meeting. And if you recall, without getting into specifics about the capital projects, Matt Stark put up a number of, let's say you have 50, and he used 50 as a planning figure to help you visualize some of the things that you're talking about that's going to come out. This could potentially be one of those projects. So as council's considering whether or not you want to go forward with this project, I would say, think about what you heard. You had a financial forecast looking at the revenues based on projected growth. And again, that 50 million was separate and distinct from the enterprise funds. That was in general fund. That's where this would be addressed. And the town is in a strong financial position. If it's council's desire to move forward with this, I believe that you have the resources to do it.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think, one of my comments was, should we have a conversation about raising taxes, and that's not here. Let's go all the way out to replenish whatever we're trying to replenish. And I think if we're going to start this project, and the cost of construction is going to continue to rise and elevate, why not do the project? I didn't look at the 6 million as sticker shock. I look at it as compared to what we do have coming down the pipeline. So I would encourage council, if we're going to go 10 toes deep in it, go ahead.
So remember, the mayor uses the term Taj Mahal. Okay, we had a community charrette and we gave them no constraints or guidelines. So build out a full completion of that vision. That would be wonderful, but I don't know that it was ever vetted against any real community requirement or need. Okay. I think it's easy for council to justify and identify a community need for phases 1 and 2. I think it gets harder as you go into the grand vision, the rain collecting gardens and the walkable trails and some of those other things. I mean, that might be a stretch. So I love that you're thinking of this, because I say all the time, it's never going to be cheaper than it is tonight. Okay, so if we're going to do it, I love the idea that you're saying, if we're going to do it, we're in for a penny, in for a pound. Let's do it, Chuck. Got it. But I don't know that the full build out is an actual requirement that's ever been established by anybody. It was as I wasn't here, but as I understand, it was a community charrette, no real side rails around what people were allowed to envision.
Okay, so one more question in a comment. The one question is zoning. Is that a shall go through the process, or is there legislative authority to just say we're going to build it there?
Oh no, we have to follow our process.
Okay.
Yeah, we're subject to our own code. Yep.
So there was some language somewhere.
But that's not a big deal. I mean, I hate to say that. It's just a process.
Yeah, it's just a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a concern. It was a question. So based on your comments with the phases, would you recommend moving forward with phase 1 and 2? I think, $1 million is a lot of money. It's not, can't say it's nothing, but compared to what the actual cost is, would it be recommended that we do phase 1 and 2? I mean, it's the entry, control, and community lounge, and without looking or fully digesting it, I don't know what that means. Is it the entry point from a security standpoint, or what? Would it be prudent to just do phase 1 and 2?
I think we could work up, if we move forward with this project, I think we could work with whoever the engineer and design firm that we end up working with. We could ask them to run a couple of different cost models. Because if you do phase 1 and phase 2 together, you're going to have some economies of scale. You'll be doing it now and locking in. You could probably get a guaranteed maximum price contract, so you know from day one what we're spending on this, versus if you do phase 1 and then in a year or 2 or 3 down the road, you say, okay, now we're ready for phase 2. Well, costs have gone up, right? And they will be able to forecast that and probably give you some comparisons to look at when the time is right, when you need to make that decision.
Okay, thanks.
So going back to the charrettes too, it is true, there was no guardrails on that. And you ask somebody how much candy they want in a candy shop, they're going to want it all. And it was really interesting to have that process, how they went through it. And it was great to have the community involved. My question to you, is there any possibility that whoever comes in operationally to run that, that's going to be their place? Will they have any monetary buy-in for the physical building versus their operations cost?
I think, yes, it would be prudent for the town to demand a license agreement with whatever operator that we end up partnering with. That is clear that all operating and maintenance expenditures for the building itself fall on the operator. Okay. I think the most ideal arrangement that we would seek would be something with some kind of defined term lease, either 10, 15, 20 years, whatever council is comfortable with an operator. They pay a nominal annual fee, $10 a year, $100 a year, whatever it is, but they become the de facto owners of the building. Roof leaks, it's on you. Programming, that's all you. I mean, the town gets the benefit of having the town logo. The sign is out front. This is the town's community center. But we don't want to take on operating, programming, or maintenance expenditures for the facility. That's what we will seek in a partnership. Now, that'll be a negotiation.
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything? Yeah.
I was asking, could you speak more on the historical aspect of it? Because you know more about it than we do.
What else do you?
It was when you were mentioning, when Chuck was mentioning, the purpose and the intent. I would like, if you could speak more to that.
So, and I think that was brought up a couple months ago, but the whole purpose was back in 2015, 2016, one of our police officers was alerted that there was a gun out, and Chief, if I'm wrong with this story, please stop me. But there was someone running around with a gun over in the neighborhood closest to this, where this community center is being proposed. And the officer, it could have gone wrong. The officer pulled his weapon to stop what was a child, and it was a fake gun. And this is where the previous chief said, oof, we need someplace for these kids to go. And that's when he started planting the seed, and that area there was not being used. And that would be the perfect place for a community center for those children that do not have all of the amenities. And that's the way this was born, was from the previous chief seeing a need and seeing how something horrible could have happened, but not for the police officer taking a beat and realizing, okay, this is not the right thing. The child complied, from what I understand, and did not point his weapon. And it could have gone really badly. And that's where this was born, was from the police department. So then we got the wheels rolling, and we ended up going to Governor Hogan. He put 250,000 in for that. I actually testified a couple times, and we got another 500,000, and that's how we ended up getting the 1.25. And then we had 100,000 that we put aside from ARPA funding. So it has been a long journey, but it is the one reason why it really didn't take off is because there wasn't a dedicated person to go and see how that would play out. And I think that Mr. Stevens and his team now have the right tools that they can move this forward. So with that, we're looking for a consensus to move forward or give staff a direction to move forward with phase one, or is phase one the right way to say it? Phase one, and start the process. So if you are in favor of having staff move forward, indicate by saying aye. If not, nay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. That brings us to 4.7, resigned to run, and I'm going to put this right over to you, Councilman Sampson.
Okay. So I brought this up, and there were two fundamental questions that I was trying to get answered. Okay. And so I want to clarify, the issue is not how this came about. That's not the issue. The fundamental question was, okay, a question arose. Fine. The expectation was that, unless I'm wrong, and I will be corrected, I stand to be corrected if so, that this was going to come to us on this night. So when the question comes up, my question was, at that point, would it be more appropriate for the town manager to bring it back to us and say, hey, a question came up. This is what happened. I'm asking the council, based on the last guidance we received, that this be tabled. This was the request of the town attorney. He will not be here, as opposed to it just be taken off the agenda. That is the question, not the other stuff. So it's how it came to us. Because the question in my mind is there's a question here of, if the council as a whole has an expectation or guidance or consensus, then the council as a whole should agree, okay, there's a reason. And I don't think anybody would have said there's an issue. But I think initially we got kind of off track, because my issue is not with, a question coming up and that. The question is, what's the best way to handle it? Because I think that it leads to these expectations, and then it leads to, oh, this happened, that happened, and everything. And so that was that was one question. That was one fundamental question. What is the best way when the council has an expectation? And I think that's what, like Councilman Johnson was trying to say, that the expectation was there because it was legally sufficient and all this on that email. Okay. And I think, like the mayor's question, I think is a valid question. Okay. So that's not the issue. The issue for me was, what is the appropriate way to come back and resolve it? And are we setting a precedent? And that's why I was trying to ask earlier, is the precedent going to be going forward that, okay, if the council has an expectation, I understand that, it wasn't necessarily an agenda, but we have this expectation, we talk about it. Then if Greg Sampson has a question, whether it's valid or not, nobody knows about it. I understand, like the mayor was saying, send a thing, I'll respond. But I will be honest, I had no knowledge that we were not going to talk about. I just assumed it's going to come back. You're going to tell us the reason why. 9 times out of 10, we're going to trust the town manager. We're going to go along with it, and we move on. And so
Go ahead.
And so that was one question that I,
Can I try and address
Yeah.
that one first before we get the second one? So, Council, I think with one minor tweak, everything you just said would be true. And here's the distinction, I think, is when we talked about these items a few meetings ago, I don't remember the exact date, and we were here late night, and we were here. Staff was given direction to bring back all of the governance documents, and we're doing that. Some we were able to turn around very quickly, and we brought them back to you. Okay. We were just given direction to do this and bring it back to us. There was not a prescriptive date that said, we want to see this. It wasn't a date certain, like with a planning project. When you continue it, you continue to a date certain. That was not the case here. It was my intention, and I created the expectation by sending you an email with the document. It was a very complex document. If you go back and watch that video and read the transcript, which staff had to do multiple times in order to capture all of the direction that council gave staff that night, there were a lot of changes. It was a very complex documents in terms of the red lines that had to be created to produce for you. So when we got the clean version, I sent it out to council because I wanted to give you the opportunity to read it and have the time to absorb it and really read it and make sure it's what you wanted reflected after all of that conversation that went late into the evening. Okay. If in doing so, I created an expectation that this would absolutely appear on this agenda, then that is my fault, and I'll own that, and I apologize for creating that expectation. But this item was never on the agenda to be taken off. Okay? So at some point in time, when I had a conversation with the town attorney, and he changed his position that, yes, he said it was legally sufficient, and I believe he will still say that the language is legally sufficient. However, the question that he was posed was about the process. Is this an ordinance or is this a charter amendment? Because those are two different processes. And if I were to bring in Resign to Run as an ordinance tonight, and it's supposed to be a charter amendment, then we will have just, not done it properly. We'll have to redo it. I mean, I don't think anybody gets a slap on the wrist or has to go to jail. It's just we're wrong. We would have to redo it. I never, ever want to bring in front of this council something that is flawed or has an error. And so when the town attorney said to me, I'm going to need more time to determine the correct procedure for this to go through, and I will not be there on Tuesday night to answer questions. Chuck, could you pause this and push it to a future date? I said, of course. Like it's that easy in my mind. So if I created the expectation, which obviously I did, so let me retract the if. By creating the expectation that this would appear on this agenda, that was an error on my part. Okay. But the flip to that though, then is that you're going to get this incredibly complex document on Friday afternoon to read, and you have the weekend. I was merely trying to give you as much time as you needed to read the document and review.
yeah, I think,
Yes,
I think,
question. Go ahead.
yeah, I think that, I understand what you're saying. I don't have a problem with what you're saying. Mike said, my only contention is that in my mind, and I think it's just a procedural issue.
Mhm.
All that had to be done was if you came back and said, hey, I sent this email out, there was a question that was posed, we're not ready for showtime. I'm thinking we're going to say, okay. In other words, there's no need to take off the agenda. You just say, this is the status, this is where we're at. That's all I'm saying. So it's a procedural thing. And also the other thing, and this kind of segues into the other question. I actually would like to hear what Madam Mayor's concern was. I understand, and I think I understand, but I think that would have given us a chance to at least hear, because like I said, I think there is a question, and in my mind, as of right now, today, this is what I think. I can't speak for anybody else. What I think is there is a question about should this be done as an ordinance or a charter? Why the concern? I don't know. I honestly don't know right now.
Mhm.
And so in my mind, it's just a matter of, okay, we're not ready. Bring it back to the council. There's a concern. He's not here. We're done. We can have a discussion. Madam can explain her point of view.
If
either
you'd like
tonight-
me to,
Yeah, I would like to hear. That was my whole point, is that
So I was at a conference with 17 other states, and we were talking about Resign to Run and talking about the merits of it and everything like that. And the conversation, I said, we're going to be the first municipality in Maryland to execute this. And they said, the question came up, is it allowed in your charter? Is it this? And then so we started going down a rabbit hole. And that was the question I had, because with the exception of Florida, 16 other states had said, look at your charter, because you cannot be, you have to go by what the state says. And this is what my question was, are we extending our authority when the state election law says this, we're adding more onto that by saying that you have to resign to run? And if we change our charter, because we clearly outline vacancies, what a vacancy is, if we put it in our charter, that's where it belongs. And that was the question that I posed to Chuck for the attorney is this, can we do an ordinance that conflicts with the charter? Or can we just simply do a charter amendment simply by having of course, a public hearing to change the vacancy rules so that our ordinance does not conflict? That was my question. And Mr. Stevens said the attorney came back and said he needs to look at that. And it was purely from an innocent conversation we had with 17 other states on that. And it just made me dig a little bit deeper on that.
Yep.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes, before I get interrupted, let me finish all my comments, please. First, the perception was 100% there. Starting from the email on May 4th, you're prepared to bring this forward on the May 12th meeting. To go further into that administrative email at the end, Todd would not be here. We knew that, which implied that if you have questions, please provide them to me, because this was still coming forward. Nothing about that said this is not coming forward. So the perception was there. Secondly, on April 14th or April 28th, it was in April, we had that long dialogue about this. And all those questions that was just proposed, or why, was asked at that table. And one, the state constitution, and Todd can provide his own opinion, grants municipalities the right, the legislative authority to amend their charter, update their charters, and create their laws of their body of politic. The charter spells out that the council shall be the judges of the qualifications for their members. We discussed that night. That's the charter giving us the express power to do something. The ordinance is essentially the law, how we enact the charter or the constitution in this case, as similar to the US, the constitution, and you have the laws. So that question was posed that night. And I think the comment was Florida has nothing to do with the state of Maryland in terms of this. So in terms of what the concern was, whether it was a legal opinion or not, notwithstanding that could have been forward tonight. You could have said, hey, staff, this was, or council, this was coming back. I had it teed up May 4th. You sent the email. However, we ran into a concern. From one member to go and to her point, innocent conversation, to have a conversation, and while we had a very candid conversation last week, you look at it at a different perspective from your conversation with Todd. That's why it was halted, which is fine. And to your point, it was never on the agenda. So to your point, it was never on the agenda. There was an expectation that was going to be on the agenda. But for you and to help you further and staff, I think what council just got to do is just make very clear motions on when we might expect something to come back. Because to your point, I guess there was no clear guidance. And y'all turned it around extremely quick. I appreciate that. And I recognize that it might be a complex ordinance. But what's the difference between getting an 800-page agenda packet on a Friday and we got a meeting on Tuesday? We're kind of conditioned for it. So while those questions might have been appropriate, and you can still send them, is no different than on the budget conversation. I sent questions, I didn't get a response, but I asked those same questions in the meeting, and I got those answers, this should have been treated similar, not once the expectation was for council to do, and I am interested in hearing Todd comments. But I will remind and I respect your opinions and the professional staff work you put together. It is council that has the vote at the end of the day, whether it's up or down. And I am, matters of discussion that needs to be addressed. I don't think I'm inclined for the legislation piece because it is not drafted in a way where do we have it ready for prime time? But the matter of discussion is 100% relevant tonight. And that's all comments I have.
President Gutenberg, anything?
Yeah, why not? I think, we've spent a half hour, I think, talking about in two different parts of this meeting. I'm still at a loss for what we're talking about. It's not on the agenda. What the discussion that we just all heard was really about, from my perspective, a point of inquiry about the way an agenda item is built. And then to make a point, the council added an agenda item that I don't believe we've really still spoken about. We're really just talking about the mechanics of how something came on or off a potential agenda. And so I really see this as an example of how we should not be doing this. I feel like the three that voted for adding this agenda item were trying to use an example that was set with a resolution we passed for a House bill, a support resolution we did. The difference between what was done that night and what was done tonight is everybody received an advance copy of what we were going to discuss. I didn't receive any notification that I needed to go search an old email and be prepared to have dialogue about something that we've yet to really talk about. And we also have not said, which we did that night, we said to the residents, and we said for the record what the compelling need was, because our rule of procedure said it really should be avoided but only done when it's kind of applicable. So I feel like what was done tonight was to make a point, and I guess the conversation we had was necessary, but it was not on the agenda. That's my only comment.
Councilman McCormick?
Yeah, so I have one kind of what I'll say rough question for you, Mr. Stevens. It's going to be a rough question in that it's not framed left and right. If we were to pass this ordinance tonight and we were wrong, and Todd's recommendation was it should have been a charter amendment, what happens?
Sure, there's a way to undo it. We probably have to do another ordinance to unwind it, and then we'd have to do the hearing to do it properly. But
Okay.
I like I said, I don't think anybody, is going to be punished, or we may have to make a statement like an OMA violation that we did something wrong.
Yeah.
Something along those lines, but I honestly don't know.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And that was going to be my only comment till Councilman Gutenberg brought up the example with the Bill 1142, right? So I would agree with the statements that were made. If this council didn't already have a conversation about this, we have absolutely informed the public. There was a consensus given for direction on this. I agree that this was not an agenda item, right? And I think voting for this ordinance tonight would be inappropriate. But I don't think the two are as far apart as maybe what was presented. I agree that council got advance notice, and there was absolutely a discussion on the urgency behind Bill 1142 and why we were doing it the way that we were. And there was a really good, fruitful conversation there. But that fruitful conversation for this has already occurred. And what frustrated me even more sitting up here, because I was inclined to just let it go, was the questions that were posed to Todd by the mayor were literally answered that night. And I think Councilman Johnson did a great job of explaining that. So, I think we probably wasted 40 minutes as well on this topic. I wish we didn't have to, but this is what happens when procedure and direction kind of gets muddled. So all I would say is I don't think they're as far apart as maybe what was presented. We've already had this conversation. The public's aware. I don't think passing the ordinance tonight makes sense to that point. But to state that this is radically different than Bill 1142, and this is not the same example, I'm not sure I buy it.
And thank you for your opinion. My questions were not answered by the attorney that night because they were very specific. And to ask a question that is has legal bearing is very prudent of an elected official other than just rubber stamping something because maybe the numbers aren't right, are on my side. I already said that I am in favor of resign to run, but there's a procedure. So the little jabs there are, they're childish, but the attorney, obviously felt that there was some merit to the questions, and he is the one, from what I understand from Mr. Stevens, he is the one that said, put a pause on this. So
Yeah.
I'm looking for.
Quick point of order.
What?
Yes, so the comment childish, what jab was childish and what does childish
I'm
mean
not
there?
going to, point
Okay.
of order, not going to answer that.
Okay,
All right, that is not relevant to this. You can watch the transcript, with your family at home. All right, moving forward. So if there a consensus to move, I don't even know, we had a discussion, but is there a consensus to move this forward to legislation? If you're in favor to move resign to run into legislation to have it voted on later on later on in this meeting, indicate by saying aye. If not, nay. Anyone in favor of moving this forward? Any opposed?
nay.
Nay.
Nay. All right. So that brings us to legislation. Thank you for that conversation, Councilman Sampson. I appreciate it.
Okay, are we ready?
You are ready.
Here we go. Ordinance 26-04, Sustainability Advisory Committee, Green Team, second reading for consideration of adoption. This is an ordinance concerning Sustainability Advisory Committee, the Green Team, for the purpose of creating a Sustainability Advisory Committee and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-04 as presented?
Motion made.
Thank you very much. Councilman Sampson, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Thank you, Councilman Gutenberg. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to 5.2, ordinance 26-05, anti-harassment policy for elected officials.
Okay, this is ordinance 26-05, anti-harassment policy for elected officials. This is the second reading for consideration of adoption. This is an ordinance concerning anti-harassment policy for elected officials for the purpose of adopting an anti-harassment policy applicable to elected officials of the town of La Plata, establishing a framework for responding to complaints of harassment made against elected officials, providing standards of conduct, and generally relating to the protection of town officials, employees, and others from harassing conduct in connection with town business.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-05 as presented?
Said motion.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. That was Councilman Gutenberg. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to ordinance 5.3, ordinance 26-06.
Okay, this is ordinance 26-06, Town of La Plata fiscal year 2027 financial plan / budget. This is the second reading for consideration of adoption. An ordinance concerning the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2027 financial plan / budget for the purpose of adopting the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2027 financial plan / budget and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-06 as presented?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that me? Thank you, Councilman Sampson. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to 5.4, ordinance 26-07.
Okay, ordinance 26-07, the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2027 fee schedule, second reading for consideration of adoption. An ordinance concerning the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2027 fee schedule for the purpose of adopting the fee schedule dealing with fees set by the Town of La Plata and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-07 as presented?
So moved.
Thank you very much, Councilman Sampson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to ordinance 26-08.
Okay, this is ordinance 26-08, Town of La Plata fiscal year 2027 tax rate. This is the second reading for consideration of adoption. This is an ordinance concerning the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2027 tax rate for the purpose of adopting the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2027 tax rate and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-08 as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Gutenberg. McCormick, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Councilman Gutenberg. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to ordinance 26-09.
All right, this is ordinance 26-09, chapter 191, zoning ordinance for the Town of La Plata, Maryland. This is the second reading for consideration of adoption. This is an ordinance concerning chapter 191, the zoning ordinance for the Town of La Plata, Maryland, for the purpose of amending the zoning ordinance to comprehensively update the town zoning ordinance requiring the demonstration of adequate public infrastructure capacity prior to development approval and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-09 as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Gutenberg. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Councilman McCormick. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ordinance 26-10.
Okay, this is ordinance 26-10, chapter 173, subdivision and land development. This is a second reading for consideration of adoption. This is an ordinance concerning chapter 173, subdivision and land development for the purpose of amending chapters 173, subdivision and land development, redefining the process by which annual school seat allocations are calculated and establishing a formal development agreement process and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-10 as presented?
So moved.
Uh,
So moved.
Councilman Johnson, all right. Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Gutenberg. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to the first reading of ordinance 26-11.
Okay, this is ordinance 26-11, revision of the employee handbook, first reading for introduction. An ordinance concerning revision of employee handbook for the purpose of amending certain personnel rules and regulations regarding policies on civility in the workplace, gift acceptance, workplace communication, vacation accrual, sale of leave, and heat-related illness prevention and management in the town's employee handbook and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. That brings us to resolution 26-29.
Okay, this is resolution 26-29, memorandum of understanding with the Maryland State Highway Administration, the Maryland Route 6 Charles Street from US Route 301 to Willow Lane Water Line Project for introduction and consideration of adoption. This is a resolution concerning the memorandum of understanding between the Maryland State Highway Administration concerning the Maryland Route 6 Charles Street from US Route 301 to Willow Lane Waterline Project for the purpose of authorizing the town manager to execute a memorandum of agreement with the Maryland State Highway Administration related to the construction of a new water line concurrent with improvements along Maryland Route 6 Charles Street from US Route 301 to Willow Lane and all matters relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution 26-29 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Sampson. All in favor, any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution 26-30.
All right, this is resolution 26-30. Wow, it's May. 26-30, Town of La Plata Artificial Intelligence Policy for introduction and consideration of adoption. This is a resolution concerning the Town of La Plata Artificial Intelligence Policy for the purpose of adopting the Town of La Plata Artificial Intelligence Policy and all matters relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution 26-30 as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Sampson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And just a piece of legislation, administrative 5.11 would have been the ordinance for resign to run. That did not have a consensus to move forward. So, Mr. Stevens, do I need to address that any other way?
I think because it was put on there, I would prefer that it be called and it can die for lack of a motion. I think
Okay.
that would be cleaner, if that's okay with council.
So ordinance 26-03, resign to run. All in favor of adopting this, please indicate by saying aye.
Well, ask for a motion first.
Oh, do I have a motion? Sorry. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 26-03 as written? Hearing none, motion fails. Brings us down to new business reports. Councilman Gutenberg.
All right. So let's see, last week on the Planning Commission, we had the pleasure of receiving the major site development plan for La Plata's high school expansion. It's quite a significant project, quite a large rework of the circulation, the site circulation flow, the way vehicle traffic will move, the way pedestrian traffic will move. And it was quite notable for the way it integrates with the other amenities that are happening along the shared use bike path that are happening in that part of our town as well. And so it really was quite a delivery of information that was done by the capital improvement plan planning folks from the Board of Education. They brought quite a lot of material, and I think it really serves as an example when we looked at the way that was conditioned and just the work that was done together between town staff. Our new senior planner was presenting, and just the work that they did together was just really quite good. And I think the town's going to be served very well by the work that's being done by the Board of Education, funded by the county, and with the work that was done with the town. So I'm really pleased that came through. And that's all I have this week.
Thank you very much. That was a fascinating conversation. Councilman McCormick.
Yes, a couple of things just to shout out for the town and say thank you. So first is celebrated Mother's Day. So to all the mothers out there in La Plata, thank you for everything that you all do. Police Week and Public Works Week, those proclamations were recognized. So I see you back there, Chief Norris. Thank you. Please tell the entire police department and police force and everybody that supports you all through administration work. Thank you very much for all that you do for La Plata. And in Public Works Week, while it is officially celebrated in 5 days, I will preemptively say thank you to the Public Works Department. Report for council. So I did CC Mr. Stevens in this, but again, I did mention that Kings Grant will be doing an HOA election for different board members. I did CC Mr. Stevens in those conversations, and he'll be able to connect with the new leader there for any projects or concerns that they have, and just continue that good partnership and communication that we have going there. And then finally, I want to say congratulations and thank you to everybody for a great first 365 days in office. Today marks that 1 year since we all took our oath of office, and I want to say thank you to everybody up here. While it's not always smooth, in my personal opinion, I think we are absolutely actioning, and I think Mr. Stevens' comment that, wow, Resolution 2630 in May really talks to that. So thank you to everybody up here, and thank you to everybody that stays involved. Thank you to the staff, and I appreciate it.
To echo the comments of Councilman McCormick, I want to thank the staff for the first year. I think the staff has done an excellent job. I think they don't get the recognition they deserve. And I'll be the first to admit that includes myself, not giving them the recognition they deserve at times. And so I want to thank them for that. I also want to thank all the council members, Madam Mayor. I think we got a lot done the first year. And I think that and I will say this, and I know some will take it funny, but I think as a presiding officer, I think we did a good job. We're a rowdy bunch at times. And so I do think that in the grand scheme of things, we did get a lot done. But I do want to thank the staff, and I do want to personally, like I said, I'm partly to blame. I want to personally apologize to the staff for the lack of recognition that we've shown them, and especially on my part. So thank you.
Councilman Johnson?
I guess I have to say something now. So my answer was gonna be no comment, but yes, it is 365-year mark, and it's been a long 365. But to council, we got a lot of work done. There's no doubt about it. Staff prepared us to make the decisions. I was having a conversation with a peer from another elected body last night, and I was bragging about the amount of work that this council has done, as they seem confused that maybe work has not been done. So I pointed them in the direction of all the work that we have done with our resolutions. And when you go back and look at it, we have made tremendous progress on behalf of the residents of the town. So thank you.
Thank you. Since our last meeting, I have been busy with local, regional, and professional engagements on behalf of the town. I attended the meet and confer session with the county commissioners regarding the tax differential. And I have to say, Mr. Stevens, you did an amazing, amazing job. Thank you for that. There was a little bit of a love fest going on between staff of county and town, and it's so nice to see the respect was very mutual. So thank you for that. I participated in the Maryland Municipal League Board of Directors retreat that was held in College Park and Pocomoke City, and it really focused on what has been accomplished by MML, the collaboration along local governments. It's really amazing that members, elected officials, whether they are part of the Mayor's Association Club or they are just members of the Maryland Municipal League, will pick up the phone and call one another for questions. And I think that is so powerful. Collaboration is understated. I also participated in the Economic Development Transportation Committee meeting, where discussions centered around transportations here and economic growth opportunities here in the county and in La Plata. So that's a great group of people. I learned so much about what's going on in the state and what SHA is doing, and just what the county is doing. So very impactful. Yesterday, I was at a meeting for the Academy of Excellence Councils, where we're planning the summer conference of the courses that are going to be offered at our summer conference. And there are some really cool ones being held. Just this afternoon, I was up in Pinefield for the groundbreaking ceremony of the Pinefield EMS Station 18 facility. What's really cool about that is going to be the first county-owned EMS facility. So they were very proud of that. And there was maybe a comment made that they hope to see that dirt is being moved over by the library soon. So we'll hopefully see that coming up. Upcoming events, as it was proclaimed today, we had a proclamation read. Bike to Work Day is this Friday, and it kicks off here at, I like dark 30, but it's 7 a.m. here. And this is initiative all across Maryland, Virginia, DC area that they're doing Bike to Work day on Friday. So hopefully we will see some people here, and I will present the proclamation that we read last meeting there. Great news, the If I Were Mayor contest. We didn't have a winner per se in the final, the 11, but we had 2 semifinalists. And this is Mrs. Guttrick's 4th grade class at A&S, and Maxwell Talbert and Riley Allen will be recognized on Friday. They are holding an assembly, and they've asked me to attend. So we will duly recognize them, and then they will have a couple of surprises that we are still ironing out, but it's a big deal. They took the time to write an essay on what they would do if they were mayor. So we will hopefully get to hear that in person. Our first summer concert starts next Friday. So Girl Crush will be there. The American Legion is holding their Memorial Day ceremony on Memorial Day, Monday, May 25th at 11 a.m. It's outdoors, weather permitting, and all are invited to join as we honor and remember the members, the men and women who gave their lives in service for our nation. And last but not least, 1 year of swearing in, and we've we've done a lot of work, and it's been a grind at time, but in the end, we talk it out, and we're doing what is best for our residents, the way that we see it. And we only have 1,096 days left until the new election. So, I think we can get a lot more done. And with that, I move to adjourn at 9:27. Thank you for coming.